After giving each other the silent treatment for 6 months, I sneaked out to a bar with my best bro to let loose. She called me out of nowhere, asking where I was. I said, I'm at home, getting ready for bed. Her tone was freezing cold. Turn on your video. I can't. It's not a good time. The very next second, she texted me a picture. Who is that girl sitting next to you? If you dare touch her waist one more time, I will chop your freaking hand off. My heart dropped to my stomach as I turned around, only to see her taking off her watch. I knew I was dead meat. The last time she took off that watch, I couldn't get out of bed for a whole week. She never used to be like this. She was the older girl next door, the one I had secretly loved my entire youth. Once, after she lost control from drinking too much, out of a sense of duty, she married me. I was completely over the moon. I gave up my job and my whole life. My friends all told me that I could never live without her for the rest of my life. And I felt the exact same way. Until I found her second phone. A guy had sent her a selfie with the message, Miss Bai, thank you for the birthday gift. I stared at it for a long time, my heart aching with an unexplainable bitterness. The sound of the bathroom door sliding open came from behind me. Bai Ningbing stepped out, surrounded by steam. How much longer are you going to stare at that? She snatched the phone right out of my hand. There wasn't a single trace of guilt on her face for being caught by her husband. I knew perfectly well that her confidence came from her money. Because right now, I was just a kept man living off her. I didn't pick a fight over that picture. I couldn't afford to, anyway. Seeing that she was about to head out, I hurriedly spoke up. Bai Ningbing, I need to talk to you. She slowly and methodically buttoned up her shirt. She looked at me, her voice totally detached. I have exactly 5 minutes. The driver is waiting downstairs. I could guess where she was going. My eyes darkened. I want to go out and get a job. Bai Ningbing fastened her watch strap. She turned slightly to look at me, staring for a long moment. Then, she pulled a checkbook from her pocket, scribbled down some numbers, ripped it out, and handed it to me. Isn't it nice enough being a full-time husband at home? Working doesn't suit you. With that, she turned to leave. I chased after her, practically begging. I'm not afraid of hard work. I really want to get a job. I know how to play the piano. But she had no patience to keep listening. In her eyes, I was just a weak, dependent pretty boy. Too used to being spoiled, completely unfit to show my face in the real world. And definitely unable to handle any hardship. Bai Ningbing raised her wrist to check the time. Time is up. She walked away without a hint of regret. I couldn't make her stay. Just as her hand gripped the doorknob, I desperately asked, it's my dad's birthday this Saturday. Do you have time to come? Bai Ningbing paused her steps. We'll see. The door softly clicked shut. A moment later, the sound of a car starting echoed from downstairs, slowly fading into the distance. A few minutes later, the servant came upstairs. They knew my wife and I weren't close, so they just acted as messengers. Madam is going to City L for a few days. She said it's for something important. The company just sent over a batch of Madam's clothes. Sir, should we send them to the cleaners? Or will you be hand washing and ironing them yourself? I sat on the sofa for a long while before snapping back to reality. I'll hand wash them, because Bai Ningbing hated the chemical smell of dry cleaning. Almost all of her clothes were washed by my own hands. Besides this, Bai Ningbing had high standards in other areas, too. She didn't like eating outside food, and she couldn't stand even a hint of mess in the bedroom. So, I learned to cook and arrange flowers. I gradually became the perfect stay-at-home husband. My life was pretty much entirely wrapped up in Bai Ningbing, but she still didn't love me. I stared at that check and closed my eyes. 6 years. I had loved her for 6 whole years. I didn't wait until Bai Ningbing came home. That night, a huge crisis hit the Fang family. Word got out that the eldest daughter of the Fang family, Fang Ya, might be sentenced to 10 years in prison because of the Fang Group's financial case. That very night, my father was rushed to the hospital with an acute brain hemorrhage. The situation was critical, and he needed immediate surgery. I stood in the hospital hallway, calling Bai Ningbing over and over again, but it rang multiple times with no answer. Just as I was about to give up, the call connected. Her tone carried a hint of impatience. Do you need money? I've told you so many times, if it's an emergency and you need cash, just contact Secretary Wu. I stared blankly at the news on the electronic screen, CEO of Bai Pharmaceuticals, just to make her male companion smile. Books the entire Disney park for a fireworks show. The sky was brilliantly lit up. Under the fireworks, a young man sat in a wheelchair, smiling as brightly as the sun. And my wife, Bai Ningbing, stood right behind his wheelchair. After a long silence, my voice came out a bit broken. Bai Ningbing, where are you? The person on the other end paused. She seemed very annoyed that I was checking up on her, but still gave a brush-off reply. I'm still busy. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Just contact Secretary Wu. She didn't notice the heartbreak in my voice at all. But the way she looked down at the person beside her was so incredibly gentle. It turned out that Bai Ningbing could be this gentle, too. The voice of my stepmother, Shu Ru, came from behind me. Did you get a hold of Ningbing? You absolutely have to ask her for help with this. Shu Ru's words stopped abruptly because she also saw the scene playing on the electronic screen. After a long moment, Shu Ru finally found her voice. She went to City H again? I just don't believe that when Bai Ningbing was in a coma back then, this guy named Song Jinian actually woke her up just by playing the piano. Even if it were true, is this any way to repay someone? Your birthday. She can't even remember it. Aunt Shu got angrier the more she spoke. But thinking about the Fang family's current situation, she couldn't help but shed tears. You need to think clearly. Don't go picking a fight with Bai Ningbing at a time like this. I won't, not because I am being a sensible husband who sees the bigger picture, but because I have no right to. For a married couple with no love, the marriage exists in name only. Looking at those fireworks filling the sky, I said very softly, all these fireworks must have cost a fortune, right? Shu Ru didn't understand what I meant. I frowned and started calling Secretary Wu. Secretary Wu had been with Bai Ningbing for a long time. He knew she didn't care about me, her husband. So, after hearing why I was calling, his tone was completely cold and condescending. Mr. Fang, you have to submit an application first and get President Bai's signature before you can get the check. Just like that luxury watch you're wearing. It also needs to be registered before you can wear it. Mr. Fang, you know exactly what I mean, right? I hung up the phone. I looked down at the wedding ring on my finger. This was the only thing on me that didn't require Bai Ningbing's approval. The only thing that didn't need to be registered and reported to her secretary. I blinked in a daze and muttered, help me find someone to sell this wedding ring. Are you crazy? I slowly turned around and said firmly, Aunt Shu, I'm wide awake. I've never been more clear-headed in my life. I am going to divorce Bai Ningbing. 3 days later, Bai Ningbing returned to the villa. As soon as she walked into the hall, the servants rushed up to greet her. A few days ago, Mr. Fang's father had an accident. Sir is in a terrible mood. He's upstairs right now. Bai Ningbing already knew about what happened to the Fang family. Feeling a bit annoyed, she carried her luggage upstairs and pushed open the bedroom door, only to see me sitting in front of the closet, packing my things. She walked straight into the walk-in closet, grabbed a bathrobe and went to the shower. As she showered, she thought to herself, with my weak and submissive personality, by the time she stepped out of the bathroom, I would have probably cooled down, unpacked her luggage for her, and gone right back to being her obedient little canary. So, when she walked out of the bathroom and saw her suitcase still sitting exactly where she left it, she felt it was time we had a talk. Bai Ningbing sat on the sofa and casually flipped through a magazine. After a long moment, she looked up at me and said, How is your father doing? I've already scolded Secretary Wu for what happened that night. I put down what I was holding, looking up to meet her eyes. After a long silence, I said calmly, Bai Ningbing, let's get a divorce. Bai Ningbing froze in sheer disbelief. She knew I was definitely upset about what happened that night. Later, when she found out about the crisis in my family, she immediately sent Secretary Wu to the hospital. But I had refused the help. This was the first time I had ever defied her. After a brief pause, she spoke in a cold, indifferent tone. A few days ago, you said you wanted to get a job. And now, just a few days later, you're throwing a tantrum about getting a divorce? Have you been playing the role of Mr. Fang for so long that you suddenly want to go out and experience life? Go take a look at the real world. Do you know how many people out there are scraping by on a few thousand a month? They have to work endless overtime and constantly swallow their pride. Meanwhile, you live in a 2,000 square meter mansion. You get to be the pampered Mr. Fang. What on earth could you possibly be dissatisfied with? Her tone was incredibly heartless and painfully cold. My lips trembled, and I let out a bitter laugh. Is there even another Mr. Fang like me? I suddenly stood up and dragged Bai Ningbing into the walk-in closet. I ripped the closet doors open with a crash. Inside hung an entire row of suits. A watch cabinet, but every single one of them is locked with a passcode. I point at them, laughing, a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. What kind of husband has to report to his wife's secretary, just to wear a damn watch? What kind of husband has to write an application to his wife's secretary, for every single penny he spends? What kind of husband goes out, without even enough money for a cab? Bai Ningbing, you tell me, is this what being Mr. Fang is supposed to mean? My family went bankrupt, and you give me an allowance of 100,000 every month, but every time I take that check, I feel like some cheap hooker, just taking a handout after being used. Bai Ningbing cuts me off coldly. Is that what you think? Is there any cheap man out there who's as bad at pleasing a woman as you are? You want a divorce? What kind of life do you think you can possibly live without me? Her grip on me hurts so much. I raise my hand, trying to push her away, but the next second, Bai Ningbing grabs my hand, her eyes absolutely freezing. She stares at my empty ring finger. Where is your wedding ring? I sold it. My voice is filled with sorrow. So, Bai Ningbing, let's just get a divorce. After I say that, I gently pull my hand away and drag out a suitcase. I start packing my things. Bai Ningbing looks absolutely livid. Staring at my fragile back, she never expected I would ever rebel like this. To actually demand a divorce so relentlessly. A wave of inexplicable rage rises in her chest. You're throwing this tantrum, just because of Song Jinian, aren't you? Why can't you just be honest? Didn't you scheme and plot your way into becoming my husband? Why do you suddenly want out now? Even after all this time, she still thinks I was the one behind what happened back then. As she speaks, ignoring my struggles, she grabs me from behind. She pins me down onto the bed. Bai Ningbing has always been dominant. I can rarely fight back. I always just have to let her have her way. But we're getting a divorce now. How can we still do this? Bai Ningbing, we are still a legally married couple. So why the hell can't we? Bai Ningbing is bordering on absolute madness right now, not caring about the consequences at all. Bai Ningbing, you didn't use protection these past few days. You're going to get pregnant. Hearing this, Bai Ningbing freezes, but then, she bursts into laughter. Looks like you've been doing a lot of thinking lately. Bai Ningbing props herself up with one hand beside me. With her other hand, she pulls open the nightstand drawer, and takes out a small, unopened box. It has 3 English letters printed right on it. Just as she is about to tear it open, her phone rings. Annoyed, Bai Ningbing picks it up. It's her mother, Madam Bai, on the other end. Madam Bai's tone is completely flat. Ningbing, your grandmother isn't feeling well. Come back and check on her, and bring Xiao Yuan with you. Your grandmother said she wants to eat his handmade lotus root cake. Bai Ningbing keeps one hand pinned hard against my chest. Staring down at me with those dark, domineering eyes, she speaks into the phone. I'll bring him over in a bit. She hangs up. She gets up and starts getting dressed. Grandma is sick. She wants to see you. You just want me to go, don't you? We'll talk about it when we get back. After a long while, the black Bentley slowly drove out of the villa gates. Bai Ningbing held the steering wheel with one hand. She focused on the road, occasionally glancing at me through the rearview mirror. We had been married for 3 years, but I rarely sat in her car. Now that I wanted a divorce, naturally, I didn't feel like talking. We both stayed silent. Half an hour later, the car pulled into a manor villa halfway up the mountain. She parked and killed the engine. Bai Ningbing turned sideways and looked at me. Grandma isn't in good health. She can't handle any stress. You know what you should say. I opened the car door, my voice cold. Don't worry. Bai Ningbing stared at my back, then got out of the car, took a few quick steps, and grabbed my hand. She could feel my resistance and immediately squeezed my palm tighter. Don't forget what you just promised. My fingers curled slightly, but in the end, I didn't pull away again. In the living room, Mrs. Bai saw us walking in hand. She couldn't help but frown slightly, but then said in a flat tone, Dr. Wong just left. You two should go check on her. After speaking, she looked at me. I called out, Mom. It took a long while before Mrs. Bai reluctantly acknowledged me with a hum. We went into the bedroom, and sure enough, the old lady was feeling unwell. Leaning against the edge of the bed and groaning, seeing Bai Ningbing bring me over, her old eyes immediately lit up. I've been wishing on the stars. And finally Xiao Yuan is here. Bai Ningbing gently pushed me forward, leaning in to whisper in the old lady's ear, I know you're not feeling well, so I brought him right to you. The old lady's eyes crinkled into a smile, but she pretended not to hear clearly, leaning in and asking loudly, Are you and Xiao Yuan trying for a baby? Making a baby is much more important. I'm at that age, it doesn't matter about me. Knowing full well the old lady was doing it on purpose, Bai Ningbing still looked right at me. I wasn't going to play along with her affectionate act. I chatted with the old lady for a while, then stood up. I'll go make some lotus root cake. After I left the room, the old lady's smile completely dropped. Leaning back, she asked, Bai Ningbing, what is going on with that Song Jinian guy? It's one thing to look out for him normally, but setting off fireworks? Be careful, your husband is going to get jealous and make a scene. You need to put more effort into Xiao Yuan's family. Don't just act like nothing is wrong. If you keep being so cold to him, he really will leave you. Bai Ningbing brushed it off with a few vague answers. She didn't explain the fireworks incident. Perhaps it was just a grand gesture made in the heat of the moment. They chatted for quite a while. Once I finished making the dessert, I brought it over. Old Madam Bai really loved it. She took a bite of the dessert, and got straight to the point. Bai Ningbing, you'll be 30 in 2 years. All your childhood friends have 2 kids by now. When are you going to give me a great-grandson to hold? I didn't say a word. Bai Ningbing glanced at me and picked up a piece of the lotus root cake. We're still young. Let's just enjoy ourselves for another 2 years. The old lady saw right through everything. She just found it hard to say it out loud. We had dinner at the Bai family mansion, and it was already pretty late by the time we headed back. Bai Ningbing buckled her seatbelt and turned to give me a look. I turned my head away, just staring out the window. She watched me for a long moment, then gently stepped on the gas. The black Bentley cruised smoothly as the streetlights blurred past us. She clearly wanted to talk to me about something, so she was driving slowly on purpose. After about 5 minutes, Bai Ningbing finally broke the silence. Tomorrow, I'll have someone move your dad to the Bai Family Hospital. The best team of specialists will take over his treatment. And from now on, just let me know if you need any money. Her tone was actually quite gentle. It was her way of making a concession. Gripping the steering wheel, she went on. Secretary Wu won't be coming to the house anymore either. Just keep your designer watches yourself. I'll make that clear to him. I just listened to her in silence. Bai Ningbing and I had been married for 3 years now. I knew her personality all too well. Honestly, these compromises from her were practically a royal favor. But she didn't say a single word about Song Jinian, which meant, if I accepted her terms, Song Jinian would still be a part of our lives going forward. Absolutely nothing was going to change. Bai Ningbing, I'm exhausted. I don't want to be trapped in a loveless marriage anymore. I turned her down coldly. My dad's current doctor is doing just fine. She knew exactly what I meant. I was rejecting her peace offering. I was dead set on a divorce, and that finally set her off. Fang Yuan, don't you forget. We signed a prenup when we got married. If we get a divorce, you won't see a single penny of my money. I know, I answered without missing a beat. Bai Ningbing had completely lost her patience. She didn't say another word to me. 20 minutes later, the car pulled into our villa's driveway. The car stopped. I unbuckled my seatbelt and was just about to get out. Click. Bai Ningbing had locked the car doors. The tension inside the car was suffocating. She had just gotten back from a business trip, and then made a trip to the family mansion. She was honestly pretty burnt out. With one hand resting on the steering wheel, she rubbed her temples with the other. And snapped, how much longer are you going to throw this little tantrum? Even now, she still thought I was just acting out. A cold chill ran through my heart. After a long pause, I spoke up softly. Bai Ningbing, I'm dead serious. I'm done with you. Her dark eyes glared right into mine as she unbuckled her seatbelt. Get out. I immediately got out and headed straight for the front door. She sat in the car for a long time, before finally getting out and following me upstairs. I slept in the guest room that night. She was furious too, so she didn't bother talking to me. The next morning, sunlight poured into the master bedroom. The glare woke her up, and she raised a hand to block the light. Fully awake now, she heard faint noises coming from downstairs. She got out of bed and walked into the walk-in closet to change. But the very next second, she froze. My suitcase was gone. Bai Ningbing pulled open the wardrobe. Sure enough, I had packed my usual clothes. She stood there quietly for a few seconds, then closed my wardrobe. Just like any other day, she picked out a business suit, changed into it, and quickly washed up. She walked downstairs while putting on her watch. And seeing the maid, she asked casually, "Where is Mr. Fang?" The maid replied cautiously, "Sir left early this morning with his suitcase. He didn't even call for the driver. He's got some nerve." Bai Ningbing ignored her, and sat down at the dining table to eat. It was her usual black coffee and whole wheat toast. But her eyes were drawn to the newspaper. It was completely covered with her and Song Jinian's scandal. Bai Ningbing stared at it for a long time, then asked the maid softly, "Did he read the newspaper before he left?" The maid answered honestly, "Sir left without having breakfast." Bai Ningbing looked up at her, then picked up her phone and called Secretary Wu. "Take care of those newspaper articles. Also, find out where Fang Yuan sold his wedding ring. I want it back by 4 o'clock. On the other end, Secretary Wu froze. After a moment, she said softly, "That's impossible, right? Mr. Fang loves you so much. How could he possibly sell his wedding ring?" Bai Ningbing's response was to hang up. She tossed her phone onto the dining table. Looking at that news, she had completely lost her appetite. Meanwhile, I had returned to the Fang family home. Shu Ru had just finished making soup to take to the hospital. Seeing me, she lost her cool. She stared at the suitcase in my hand, and snapped, "Every married couple fights. It's normal for a woman to fool around sometimes. That Song Jinian looks so pathetic. And he's even crippled." I asked around, "And he's been divorced before. A guy like that could never threaten your position." What position did I even have with Bai Ningbing? I laughed bitterly, packing the pigeon soup into a thermos. "I'll go to the hospital and check on Dad later." Shu Ru glared at me, wiped her hands with a rag, and scolded, "If your dad finds out you're getting a divorce, the anger will probably kill him. Fang Yuan, let's take a step back here. Even if you really can't stand living with her anymore, how will you survive if you divorce her? With the family in this state, how on earth are you going to support us?" I slowly screwed the lid onto the thermos. Once it was tight, I looked down and said, "We'll find a way. The money from selling the wedding ring is enough to cover Dad's medical bills for half a year. As for my sister's legal fees, I plan to sell this house. Besides, I'll go out and get a job to support the family." As I said this, my eyes welled up with tears. This house was left to me by my mother. Even in our hardest times, I had never touched it. Shu Ru was stunned. She stopped trying to persuade me, but I knew she still completely disagreed. After settling things at home, I headed to the hospital. Thanks to the treatment, my father's condition was mostly stable now. But he was still feeling pretty down, constantly worrying about my sister, Fang Ya's, future. I held off on bringing up the divorce for now. In the afternoon, the attending doctor came by for her rounds. Dr. Lu Rian. Despite her young age, she was already a leading expert in neurosurgery. She was absolutely stunning, and carried herself with such elegance. She had a great figure, too. After finishing the checkup, she caught my eye. "Let's talk outside." I froze for a second. Then, I put down what I was holding and whispered to my dad. "I'm stepping out for a bit." A moment later, we reached a quiet hallway. Sensing my anxiety, Dr. Lu gave me a reassuring smile. Then she looked down at the medical chart. "Last night, I consulted with a few department heads in surgery. We all agree that your father needs a specialized, custom rehab program moving forward. Otherwise, it'll be incredibly difficult for him to fully recover. The only catch is, it's a bit pricey. It'll be around 150,000 a month. 150,000 was an astronomical number for me right now. But I didn't even hesitate. I just said, "We'll do the treatment." Rian closed the chart. She just looked at me quietly. Truth is, we actually knew each other from way back. But I had completely forgotten. When I was just a little kid, she used to live right next door. She still remembered how, on summer evenings, I'd string up little fairy lights on my bedroom balcony. I would just sit there, desperately missing my mom. I used to ask her, "Rian, is my mom ever coming back?" Rian didn't know the answer. She had no way to tell me. Now, as she looked at me, she thought back to 3 years ago when she saw the news of my wedding while abroad. She thought I had found true love. But my life was miserable. Bai Ningbing was ice cold to me, always treating me so harshly. Rian was just about to say something, when a cold, sharp voice rang out from down the hall. "Fang Yuan." It was Bai Ningbing. It looked like she had come straight from the office. She marched toward us, her high heels clicking sharply against the hallway floor, echoing loudly. Moments later, Bai Ningbing stopped right in front of us. She held out her hand, her voice carrying a lazy, almost arrogant drawl. "Well, if it isn't my senior, Dr. Lu. Long time no see." Rian looked at the hand offered to her and gave a polite, faint smile. She reached out and shook it. "CEO Bai, what a rare surprise." Ningbing dropped her hand almost immediately. She turned to look at me. "Let's go check on him." There was a fierce, unspoken tension brewing between the two women, but I was completely oblivious to it. I didn't want to make a scene with Bai Ningbing in front of Dr. Lu, so I just nodded. "Dr. Lu, I'll head back in for now." Rian gave a small smile. Bai Ningbing and I walked back to the hospital room together. Neither of us said a word. Ever since I made up my mind to get a divorce, I stopped walking on eggshells around her. I was completely done trying to please her. Just as we reached the door to the room, Bai Ningbing violently grabbed my wrist. She slammed me against the wall, pinning me there. Her eyes were swirling with complex emotions. The way Rian had just been looking at me, it was the way a woman looks at a man. Bai Ningbing glared at me fiercely, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "What exactly were you talking about with her?" I tried to yank my arm away, but with just a slight push from Bai Ningbing, I was pinned right back down. Our bodies were pressed tightly together, my hard chest against her softness. I felt so humiliated. "Bai Ningbing, we're in a hospital. I know that, obviously." Bai Ningbing was completely unfazed. She stayed pressed tightly against me, her beautiful face leaning close to my ear. Her voice carried a dangerous edge. "Do you know who she is?" I could guess exactly what she was getting at. She was the CEO of the Bai Group, a powerful woman of high status. She would never allow her husband to get too close to another woman. I let out a bitter smile. "Look, Bai Ningbing," I said, "I don't have a dirty mind like you do. And I'm definitely not in the mood for it either, so you can relax. Until we get divorced, I won't be messing around with anyone else." With that, I pushed her away, and turned to walk into the hospital room. Bai Ningbing followed right behind, pushing the door open. The moment she stepped inside, she frowned. "It's not even a private room?" Shu Ru brought over a chair for her, speaking in a soft, gentle voice. "Come, sit down. I'll have Xiao Yuan peel some fruit for you." "Xiao Yuan, don't just stand there. You should head home with Ningbing in a bit. I'll stay here and take care of your dad." Bai Ningbing sat down and chatted with my dad. She was always so cold to me, but in front of my father, she played the perfect wife flawlessly. Having navigated the ruthless business world for years, whenever she actually wanted to win someone over, it was effortless for her. My dad had always been very fond of her. But when Bai Ningbing suggested transferring him to a better hospital, he firmly refused. He just chuckled and said, "Let's not make a fuss. I'm perfectly fine right here. Besides, Dr. Lu is very dedicated." Knowing exactly how far to push, Bai Ningbing didn't insist. As long as you're comfortable here, Dad. Just then, I finished peeling an apple and handed it to her. Bai Ningbing took it, but just set it aside. Instead, she grabbed my arm, stood up, and looked at my parents. I'll take Xiao Yuan home now. Please get some rest and take care of yourself, Dad. My dad nodded, watching us as we walked out. As Xu Ru was tidying up the room, my dad suddenly broke the silence. They're fighting again, aren't they? Xu Ru's hands trembled slightly, but she quickly tried to cover it up. Oh, don't be silly. Xiao Yuan and Ningbing are doing just fine. My dad let out a heavy sigh. You're still lying to me. The way Xiao Yuan looks at her, it's changed. Whenever he used to look at Ningbing, his eyes would literally light up. That light is gone now. Xu Ru froze for a long moment. Before saying softly, maybe you should talk to him. My dad slowly leaned back against the headboard. After a long pause, he murmured, No, I won't push him. If he doesn't want to talk about it, then I'll just pretend I don't know. Little Ya has already lost her freedom. I refuse to let Xiao Yuan lose his freedom, too. Xu Ru opened her mouth to speak, but swallowed her words. Bai Ningbing led me downstairs. The evening sun cast a brilliant crimson glow over her black Bentley, making it look excessively flashy. Without a word, I was shoved into the car. Just as I was about to get out of the car, she grabbed me in a tight embrace. Bai Ningbing's expression was ice cold. From outside the car, you'd never guess she was using so much strength. I couldn't move an inch. I couldn't believe this woman was so incredibly strong. Only when I gave up struggling did Bai Ningbing finally let go. She didn't speak for a long while. I just looked at her side profile. The dim lighting cast a shadow across her face, making her features look even more delicate and soft. Paired with the halo of her high status, she could easily make any man's heart skip a beat. In a daze, I remembered that it was exactly this face that had completely bewitched me, keeping me hopelessly in love for so many years. Bai Ningbing turned sideways to look at me. She rarely ever bothered herself with my matters. She didn't really care much about me, but she also didn't want the hassle of changing husbands. Women with her status and position wouldn't just change husbands so easily. After a long moment, she pulled a velvet box out of her pocket and opened it. Inside was a diamond ring. It was the wedding ring I had sold the other night. Bai Ningbing kept her eyes locked on my face, refusing to miss even the slightest shift in my expression. It was as if she was trying to see right through my thoughts. After a long while, she spoke in a flat tone. Give me your hand, put the ring on, and then come home with me. I'll pretend everything that happened before didn't happen. You're still Mr. Fang. It was a rare act of merciful forgiveness from her, but I refused. Bai Ningbing's patience was running thin. What exactly do you want? I murmured softly, a divorce. Let's get a divorce. Bai Ningbing was always busy with work. Because I was making a fuss and refused to go home, early this morning. She couldn't even find a base layer to wear. She was in a really foul mood. Just as she was about to lose her temper, she noticed that next to a white BMW in the parking lot, Lu Rian was talking to a nurse. This made Bai Ningbing even more displeased. She poked the inside of her cheek with her tongue. Just then, her phone rang. It was a call from Secretary Wu. Bai Ningbing answered it. Her tone was sharp. What is it? Secretary Wu dutifully informed her. Mr. Fang accidentally took a fall getting out of bed just now. He might have damaged the nerves in his leg. He's in a really bad mood right now. President Bai, would you like to head over to City H and check on him? If you go, he'll definitely be thrilled. Bai Ningbing gripped her phone, staying quiet for a moment. She was clearly hesitating because I was right there next to her. The volume on her phone was quite loud. I heard everything. I let out a faint smile, opened the car door, stepped out, and walked away without looking back. A gust of evening wind blew past, chilling my entire body. Thankfully, I wasn't swayed just now when Bai Ningbing brought out the wedding ring. I didn't change my mind. I had absolutely no desire to go back to that suffocating married life ever again. As my silhouette faded into the distance, Bai Ningbing stared at my retreating back, while telling Secretary Wu on the other end of the line, find him the best doctor. Secretary Wu was quite surprised. You're not going to City H to see him? Bai Ningbing hung up without another word. After hanging up on Secretary Wu, she tried calling my number, only to find that she couldn't get through anymore. The texts wouldn't go through either. I blocked her number and all her social apps. Furious, Bai Ningbing threw her phone aside. After a long while, she picked up the diamond ring, staring at it in silence. Now, she finally believed that I was dead set on leaving her. 3 days later, in the CEO's office on the top floor of the Bai Group building, Bai Ningbing stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was on the phone with old Mrs. Bai. The old lady missed me again. She asked Ningbing to bring me over for a visit. Ningbing just coaxed her, brushing it off. Just then, a knock came from the door. Ms. Bai, you have a special delivery. Bai Ningbing raised a brow. She had a pretty good idea of what it was. A moment later, Secretary Wu walked in, placing a courier envelope on the desk. She said softly, "It's from your husband." Bai Ningbing stayed by the window, staring at it for a few seconds before slowly walking over. She picked up the document from the desk and tore it open. Just as she expected, it was a divorce agreement. She skimmed through it. He's got some nerve. He didn't ask for a single thing. Walking away with absolutely nothing. Her face grew darker by the second. After a long pause, she muttered, "What has he been up to lately?" Secretary Wu quickly replied, "It seems he's trying to sell the family mansion. A lot of people have gone to see it, but no one has actually made an offer yet. Also, he's looking for a job. He won some national awards back in college, and a pretty good firm seems interested in hiring him. The salary and benefits are quite good." Bai Ningbing slowly sat down. Holding up the divorce agreement, her voice was ice cold. "Find someone to look into that mansion. Crush the price to the absolute bottom and buy it." She let out a cold sneer. As for his job, he can't handle real hardship anyway. Secretary Wu froze. She had assumed Ms. Bai would completely destroy the Fang family, but surprisingly, she didn't. Didn't she hate Fang Yuan more than anything? She only hesitated for a few seconds. Bai Ningbing snapped, "Why are you still standing here? Get out." Secretary Wu backed out of the room. Once outside the office, she clenched her fists. After a brief moment of hesitation, she took out her phone and made a call. 2 days later, "I sold the house. A mansion with a market value of 50 million. Was lowballed down to 28 million. Aunt Shu furiously cursed them for being so greedy. But I gritted my teeth and agreed. Because my sister was locked up and she couldn't afford to wait." Aside from the massive legal fees, the Fang family had a giant financial black hole to fill. Under all this crushing pressure, I literally had no other choice. After selling the house, I pulled some strings to visit Fang Ya. Fang Ya had always been gorgeous and elegant. In the past, wherever she went, a whole crowd of wealthy heirs would be chasing after her. But now, she looked incredibly worn out. We spoke through the thick prison glass. "Go find a lawyer named Dai Mubai, Yuan. He can help me." I wanted to ask her for more details. But our time was up. The guards were already taking Fang Ya away. She looked back at me, her little brother, her eyes filled with so much pain and reluctance to let go. To her, I've always been the darling of the Fang family ever since we were little. But now, I'm running myself ragged just to keep our family afloat. Fang Ya saw the papers. She knew exactly what I was going through. Right before I left, I stood up and gripped the railing tight. The veins bulged in my arms from the strain. "Sis." Fang Ya pressed her index finger to her lips and mouthed 2 words. I watched them take her away. After a long while, I slowly sat back down. Dai Mubai. I have to find Dai Mubai. The moment I stepped out of the detention center, I got a call from that training center. The person on the line was incredibly polite, calling me Mr. Fang, and told me they weren't hiring at the moment. I listened, then quietly hung up the phone. I knew this was Bai Ningbing's doing. She was forcing me to come crawling back. But I wasn't naive enough to think that Bai Ningbing had actually fallen for me. She just needed a husband to wait on her hand and foot. A convenient prop to keep the Bai family's stock prices stable. To her, I, Fang Yuan, was completely worthless. My phone rang again. I picked it up and saw an unknown number, but when I answered, it was Bai Ningbing. Her voice was as cold and arrogant as ever. "Fang Yuan, we need to talk." Half an hour later, I walked into the Bai Group building. Secretary Wu was waiting for me downstairs, and she escorted me all the way to the CEO's office on the top floor. I pushed the door open. Bai Ningbing was looking through some files. The sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing her in a glow that made her look as breathtaking as a goddess. Even Secretary Wu couldn't help but steal another glance. "Mr. Fang is here." Bai Ningbing looked up, her eyes sweeping over me. It had been a week. I still stood tall and looked sharp, though a bit worn out. But Bai Ningbing didn't feel an ounce of pity. She had always been cold-hearted when it came to me. She glanced at Secretary Wu, and tilted her chin. "Leave us," and shut the door. Once Secretary Wu was gone, Bai Ningbing turned her attention back to me, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "It's been a whole week. I finally get to see the elusive Mr. Fang. Why don't you come have a seat? Didn't you used to love baking treats and finding excuses to bring them to me? Have you forgotten where the sofa is?" "Bai Ningbing, I'm not here to catch up." Bai Ningbing stared at me. After a moment, she let out a cold laugh. "So, you're here to beg." She picked up the coffee from her desk and took a delicate sip. The whole time, her eyes never left me. There was something incredibly sexy about the way she looked at a man. She spoke in a flat voice. "I did some math for you before you got here. Given the Fang family's current mess, you need to pull in at least 30 to 40,000 a month just to cover your dad's medical bills. And of course, that includes the cash you got from selling your wedding ring." My face was deadpan. "As long as Ms. Bai backs off and gives me a break, I'll find a way, Ms. Bai." Bai Ningbing smirked. "It was just last week, wasn't it? You were holding me in bed, panting like a needy puppy as you moaned my name. How come it's Ms. Bai after just a few days? I knew she wasn't going to let me off the hook. I kept my voice very soft. Bai Ningbing, you don't have any real feelings for me. I don't want a single thing in the divorce. You wouldn't be losing anything, would you? You can easily find someone younger and more handsome to marry. Bai Ningbing swirled the glass in her hand. Staring right at me, she let out a cold laugh. And then what? Let you run around with the title of my ex-husband, just to sleep around and humiliate me? Her words were incredibly harsh. They made my blood boil. If you refuse to sign the divorce papers, and you won't let me go, then I only have one choice left. Bai Ningbing's expression turned absolutely lethal. Before I could even react, she closed the distance between us, leaning into my ear to whisper a dangerous threat. What did you just say? I didn't back down. Instead of exploding, Bai Ningbing just laughed. She pressed her body against mine, murmuring like a sweet lover. Who exactly are you going to go to? Here in City B, let's see who would even dare to take you in while you carry my name. Knowing she had made her point, she backed off. She let go of me, and said in a gentle, coaxing tone, come back. Be my Mr. Fang. Everything will be just like it used to be. I furrowed my brows. Suddenly, I caught sight of a brand new, gleaming saxophone sitting in the massive bookcase across the room. I remembered the tabloid rumors, how the CEO of the Bai Group, just to make her little boy toy smile, spent a staggering 20 million on a world-class saxophone. So, this was it. I let out a bitter laugh. Just like it used to be? Just like before, being her little plaything, constantly begging for her attention, while getting zero care or respect in return. Even her secretary could treat me like garbage. Just like before, sharing her with other men? I don't want any part of that past anymore. My smile vanished, and I gritted out every single word. You can find someone else, to play the role of your husband. With that, I turned around and headed for the door. But the very next second, Bai Ningbing wrapped her arms around me from behind. She pressed her face right against the back of my ear, sending a slight shudder down my spine. Bai Ningbing let out a dark chuckle. Divorce? Who's going to satisfy you if we divorce? An ordinary woman could never handle your needs. On the outside, she always played the part of a refined, elegant boss, but behind closed doors, she was incredibly rough. Sometimes I honestly thought she was a psycho. Her hands started wandering, crossing the line. I couldn't take it anymore. I spun around and slapped her hard across the face. The air in the room instantly froze. It was the first time I had ever laid a hand on her. And probably the very first time the almighty boss Bai had ever been slapped by a man. Let alone by her sweet, obedient husband. Bai Ningbing was already a woman with a vicious temper. Her face turned ice cold in a flash. Whatever twisted lust was in her eyes vanished completely. It was as if that moment of passion was nothing more than a sick illusion. Look at you, you've grown a spine, hitting people now? Do you really want a divorce that badly? Fang Yuan? 3 years ago, you did everything you could to marry me. And now, 3 years later, you're doing everything you can to leave me. Do you really think you can just waltz in and out of the Bai family? Or do you think I, Bai Ningbing, am just that easygoing? That I can be so easily manipulated? I froze. A chill ran down my spine. Finally, Bai Ningbing was telling the truth. She hated me, Fang Yuan. She hated the Fang family. She hated Fang Ya too. She hated that accident, the one that forced her to marry me. So, when the Fang family collapsed, even though Bai Ningbing could have easily helped, she just stood by and watched. I didn't try to explain the past anymore. I just quietly said, Bai Ningbing, in the past, I was the one who was foolish for loving you, but that won't happen again. After a long silence, I looked up at her. She had been staring at me the whole time, with a deep, unreadable look in her eyes. But I didn't even want to figure it out anymore. My voice sounded completely broken. Bai Ningbing, I'm really tired. Let's just part ways peacefully. After saying that, I opened the door and walked out. This time, Bai Ningbing didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, watching me walk away. After a while, she looked down and gave a cold, bitter smile. Divorcing couples usually tear each other apart. There's no such thing as a peaceful breakup. As I left the Bai Corporation building, my mind was still echoing with what Bai Ningbing had said. Come home with me. You're still Mr. Fang. Do you really think you can just waltz in and out of the Bai family? Or do you think I, Bai Ningbing, am just so easy to manipulate? Her words felt suffocating. I stayed outside for a long time to catch my breath, before heading back to my rented place. An old apartment in a rundown neighborhood, just a few dozen square meters. It only had the cheapest furniture. Compared to our old Fang family mansion, it was like night and day. That day, Aunt Shu stood in the cramped living room in total silence for a long time. I knew she wasn't used to it, but right now, this was all I could afford. In the kitchen, Aunt Shu was making soup again. When she saw me come back, she turned off the stove. How's your sister doing? I didn't bring up the whole mess with Bai Ningbing. I just looked down, taking off my shoes at the door, and quietly replied, my sister told me to find a lawyer named Dai Mubai. She said this lawyer can help us win the case. Dai Mubai? Aunt Shu looked thoughtful, like she had heard the name before. Well, whatever it takes, we need to find this person. If he's really that good, your sister might actually get out. I nodded. I just called K. Jen. I asked him to ask around for me. K. Jen and I had known each other since we were kids. After graduating college, he became a model and traveled all over the world. He had a massive network of connections. Hearing K. Jen's name, Aunt Shu's expression became a bit complicated. In the past, she never liked me hanging out with him. She thought he was just some flashy showbiz guy. Who would have thought we'd actually need his help now? Aunt Shu was silent for a moment, then she served me a bowl of soup. Drink this, it's good for you. You've lost weight lately. Weren't you supposed to start work at the training center next week? I looked down at the soup and said softly, I'm not going. I'll find another job. Aunt Shu sat down beside me. What happened? I didn't want her to worry, so I pretended to brush it off. It's Bai Ningbing. She pulled some strings, and they let me go. It's okay, Aunt Shu. I can just find another job. There are so many job postings in the paper, I'm bound to find something. I thought Aunt Shu would scold me, but she stayed quiet for a long time. She just said, everything will be fine once your sister gets out. She got up and went to the kitchen. But a moment later, Aunt Shu's voice came from the kitchen, sounding choked up. Xiao Yuan, do you really think I'm that cruel? To force you to live at Bai Ningbing's mercy? We know exactly what kind of person she is. How could your dad and I not know? But what else can we do? What if your sister never gets out? What will happen to you then? Aunt Shu started crying as she spoke. My heart ached too, but I swallowed my emotions and said, Aunt Shu, I'm all grown up now. Even without my sister, I can still take care of this family. Aunt Shu burst into tears. I spent the next few days job hunting. I couldn't find anything suitable. Deep down, I knew why. Any decent place had probably been warned not to hire me. They'd never take me. So, I lowered my standards and joined a performance company. They called it a company, but it was really just playing gigs for store openings and anniversaries. I got paid per performance. Since I was decent looking and played the violin well, the manager gave me $300 a show. When things were busy, I'd run to 3 or 4 shows a day. I was playing for at least 6 hours a day. My slender fingers had long developed thin calluses and blisters. The days were tough, constantly rushing around, but I never regretted it. I never called Bai Ningbing, and she never called me either. I'd occasionally see her in the news, attending banquets, acquiring companies. In every setting, Bai Ningbing was always so elegant and untouchable. Up on the hospital rooftop, I sat quietly next to a bottle of ice-cold cola I just bought from the convenience store. In the past, I would never drink something like this, because it was unhealthy, but now, I drink it from time to time. That's when Lu Rian came over, wearing her white surgical coat. She stood beside me, quietly watching the sunset with me. As the last ray of golden light faded away, I turned and looked at her. I quickly stood up, feeling a bit awkward. Dr. Lu, the way Lu Rian looked at me, carried a sense of distant memories. It was so gentle, I felt uneasy. Just then, Lu Rian cast her gaze into the distance and spoke softly. Xiao Yuan, you used to call me Sister Rian when you were little. On summer nights, you loved sleeping out in a little tent, and my mom would always bring you snacks. She's really missed you all these years. I stood there, stunned for a long time. Finally, the memories came rushing back. I murmured, Sister Rian. As those words slipped from my lips, I felt a sharp pang of sorrow. Because back in the days when I had Sister Rian, I was completely carefree. Still the pampered little young master of the Fang family. But now, seeing her again, everything had changed. Lu Rian turned her head, looking at me quietly. Then, she pulled a bank card from her pocket. There's 2 million yuan on this. The PIN code is your birthday. It should be enough to cover your uncle's medical bills. I refused to take it. I can make my own money now. Really, I can. Lu Rian looked down at my hands, which were covered in several medical bandages. Her throat tightened. Xiao Yuan, you don't have to push yourself so hard. She took out some ointment and carefully treated my wounds. Once she was finished, I gently curled my fingers inward and spoke slowly. In the past, I always lived under the protection of others. I had no sense of self. I might have nothing right now, but I'm only 24 years old. I want to start over on my own. After I said that, I looked up at Lu Rian. Just like always, her eyes were so gentle, yet carried a hint of deep sorrow. I only stayed at the hospital for 2 hours. Later on, I rushed over to perform at a bar's grand opening. By the time I finished, it was already past midnight. Carrying my violin on my back, I walked alone down the empty streets. A chilling breeze swept past, and my whole body couldn't help but shiver. In the dead of night, the neon lights were dim. A massive screen on a skyscraper was broadcasting celebrity gossip, artificially keeping the city's nightlife alive. City B's business tycoon, Bai Ningbing, specially flew to City H, spending a romantic mid-autumn festival with her male companion. On the screen, Secretary Wu was pushing Song Jinian in a wheelchair. Cornered by reporters right by the elevators. Beside him, Bai Ningbing looked completely annoyed. I figured she was probably pretty pissed off about being caught on camera. Next up was Song Jinian's interview. He was smiling so brightly at the cameras. I'm incredibly happy this Mid-Autumn Festival. Moving forward, I just hope my legs can fully recover. Also, I'm really hoping to study violin under the musical genius, Mr. Wei. Oh, you're asking about Ms. Bai? She is without a doubt, the most important woman in my life. After he said that, a brief flash of guilt crossed Song Jinian's eyes. 4 years ago, he stole my identity. He made Bai Ningbing believe that he was the one playing the violin for her every single day. He was terrified she would find out the truth, but he quickly convinced himself otherwise. After all, when Bai Ningbing finally woke up, it was him, Song Jinian, sitting in that hospital room holding the violin. Bai Ningbing would never know. Late at night, on the streets of City B, I just stood there in silence. I tilted my head up slightly, watching the giant screen as Bai Ningbing poured all her care and affection onto someone else. It wasn't until I felt freezing cold that I finally snapped back to reality. I muttered softly, "Ah, so it's already the Mid-Autumn Festival." Slinging my violin over my shoulder, I turned to leave. The streetlights stretched my shadow out so long. Song Jinian was probably being too flashy. He finally caught Madame Bai's attention. Madame Bai tracked me down while I was playing a gig at a local supermarket. I was wearing a cheap tuxedo rented from the agency, with several band-aids wrapped around my fingers as I played the violin. If you didn't know, who would have guessed I was Mr. Fang of the Bai group? Madame Bai stood by the stage with a severe look on her face. When I saw her, my fingers faltered for a second, but I quickly refocused on playing. During the intermission, Madame Bai walked over, her tone icy and distant. "There's a coffee shop right outside. I'll wait for you there." Without another word, she left. I just went back to wiping down my violin. My colleague looked worried. He leaned in and whispered, "Fang Yuan, are you in some kind of trouble?" That woman just now looked like bad news. I shook my head with a faint smile. "It's nothing, just an elder I know." He looked a bit skeptical, but I just changed back into my everyday clothes. I walked over to the coffee shop by the entrance. Madame Bai was sitting by the window. She looked far too elegant for a place like this, so she really stood out. I went over and sat down. She had already ordered a glass of lemon water for me. "Coffee is bad for your health," she said flatly. She looked me up and down, unable to hold back her scolding. "If you wanted to play around and experience life, I could have arranged the best orchestra for you." "What kind of place is this? Is this somewhere Mr. Fang should be? And what on earth are you wearing?" "Before Bai Ningbing gets back. Everything needs to go right back to normal. This is an absolute mess." She went on, and I just sat there listening quietly. When she finally finished, I gave a faint smile. "I actually like it this way. Bai Ningbing and I are getting a divorce. You know exactly where she went, don't you?" Madame Bai froze. It was the very first time I had ever spoken to her with that kind of tone. I didn't even call her Mom. In the past, no matter how coldly Bai Ningbing treated me, I was always so incredibly respectful to her mother. For a moment, Madame Bai seemed completely taken aback. I decided to just lay it all out. "I know you've never liked me. So, the fact that you came looking for me today is pretty surprising. Honestly, I always thought you couldn't wait for us to get a divorce." Madame Bai just stared at me in silence. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. I really had changed. I was no longer the weak pushover I used to be. I had grown a backbone. But Madame Bai had spent decades in high society, so she knew exactly how to play the game. Hearing this, she just smiled. A calm, breezy smile. After a brief moment, Madame Bai dropped the smile. "It's true that I don't care much for you. But compared to you, I'd hate it even more if Song Jinian married into our family. Someone with his trashy background? How dare he even dream of marrying into the Bai family?" She suddenly let out another laugh. "But he has no chance anymore. His leg is ruined and he's already been divorced. Even an ordinary woman wouldn't want him, let alone Bai Ningbing." A chill ran down my spine, but Madame Bai just sighed softly, completely at ease. "You're very handsome. No wonder Bai Ningbing still can't let you go, even with all that resentment." With that, Madame Bai stood up. She glanced around the room and said coolly, "I'll have a talk with Bai Ningbing. I'll tell her to bring you back." Looking disgusted, she added, "This place isn't meant for someone like you." Madame Bai walked out of the cafe. A black luxury car was already waiting outside. The driver respectfully opened the door. After Madame Bai got in, she leaned back against the plush leather seats and let out a slow sigh. She knew exactly what I was thinking. Nothing more than a loss of freedom, just like a captive pet. A husband stripped of his wife's respect. But isn't that just how things go? He's still too young, far too impulsive. The thought of it filled Madame Bai with disgust all over again. She looked out the window, only to spot a familiar face. He had an extraordinary presence, standing out brightly in the crowd. But in Madame Bai's eyes, he was an absolute thorn in her side. A total eyesore, she muttered under her breath. That little bastard. The driver up front almost thought he heard it wrong. How could the madam say something so incredibly vulgar? He must have misheard her. After Madame Bai left the cafe, I sat there alone for a few minutes. I didn't have the luxury of time to grieve over anything. I was way too busy. Too busy trying to make a living. It started pouring rain on my way back late that night. Terrified my violin would get wet, I took off my coat and wrapped it tight. I sprinted toward the bus stop. I rarely ever splurged on a cab, but finding an empty cab in the rain was nearly impossible anyway. I stood in the freezing midnight drizzle for half an hour, shivering uncontrollably. Finally, I gave up and decided to just run the rest of the way. But after only 2 steps, I saw her, Bai Ningbing, parked right in front of me on the glistening, rain-soaked curb. Was a sleek, black luxury sedan. The window was rolled halfway down, revealing Bai Ningbing's haughty, aristocratic face. She was wearing an elegant, long black gown, looking like she had just stepped out of some formal gala. She radiated an effortless aura of wealth and ease, making my wretched state look even more pathetic. Across the dark, rainy night, our eyes locked in a silent, heavy gaze. My lips trembled from the biting cold, while my hands clung desperately to my violin, as if I was gripping the very last lifeline I had left. Deep down, I knew exactly what this was. This was the olive branch Bai Ningbing was offering me. All I had to do right now was swallow my pride, and get into her car. Within seconds, I'd have a clean, warm blanket and hot water. By tomorrow morning, I wouldn't have to drag myself to the mall to perform. I would wake up in a lavish, incredibly soft bed, and go back to being the pampered Mr. Fang. But that wasn't what I wanted anymore. I just stood there in the pouring rain, staring silently back at her. The downpour grew heavier, soaking through my hair, and blurring the space between our eyes. For about a full minute, I ran forward in the rain, shielding my head with one hand. The rain splashed up, hitting the body of a luxury car. She and I passed each other on that late-night street, right in the middle of the pouring rain. The sound of my footsteps splashing through the rain seemed to strike heavily against Bai Ningbing's heart. But she stayed perfectly still. She didn't get out of the car. She just let me pass by. She saw how incredibly pale my face was. She saw the medical tape wrapped around my fingers, and noticed that I wasn't wearing a single decent piece of clothing. But even so, I absolutely refused to bow my head to her. The rain kept pouring down. Through the car's windshield, the wipers swept back and forth relentlessly. Inside, both the driver and Secretary Wu sat in dead silence. Because it was blindingly obvious, Bai Ningbing was in a terrible mood. After a long while, Bai Ningbing finally broke the silence, her voice soft but cold. Secretary Wu, care to explain why Fang Yuan isn't working at that agency, and chose some pathetic little gig company instead? Does he just love being miserable? Secretary Wu's heart skipped a beat. He hesitated for a long moment before muttering, I thought, this would make him come back home sooner. Boss, I can go explain it to him right now. Tell him this wasn't your idea. In the dim light, Bai Ningbing's voice dripped with mockery. Do you honestly think he cares? In his eyes, is there any difference between what you do and what I do? Secretary Wu breathed a sigh of relief. But a second later, Bai Ningbing's voice turned incredibly cold and ruthless. Get out. Secretary Wu froze completely. Boss, it's pouring out there. Bai Ningbing leaned back against her seat and tilted her head up slightly. She let out a dry laugh. Fang Yuan is out there running. Why shouldn't you? Tell me, Secretary Wu, what exactly makes you think that you're so much more precious than him? Secretary Wu flushed with deep humiliation. He knew exactly what this was. This was Bai Ningbing punishing him for daring to sabotage me behind her back. Her message was loud and clear. Either get out and run, or pack your things and get the hell out of my company. He had severely underestimated what I meant to Bai Ningbing, and way overestimated his own worth. Trembling, Secretary Wu stepped out of the car. The rain was absolutely relentless. It instantly soaked through his expensive suit. Water streamed down his face and hair. Gritting his teeth, he started running through the downpour. In the front seat, the driver watched the whole thing in total shock. You have to understand, Secretary Wu was usually incredibly arrogant, constantly throwing his weight around because he went to the same college as the boss. He looked down on absolutely everyone. Who would have thought that he'd end up like this today? Bai Ningbing leaned back into the plush leather seat. She watched him quietly, but her mind was completely focused on me. She found herself wondering, why was she trying so hard to force me back? My personality was far too soft. I wasn't her type at all. The truth was, Bai Ningbing had never actually loved anyone. Sure, before we got married, she'd considered settling down with Song Jinian. But that was only because she was captivated by the memory of a violin playing when she first woke up. Except lately, she couldn't stand listening to Song Jinian play anymore. It just gave her a headache. And as for me, it must just be habit. A few days ago, she lost a pair of earrings. that she couldn't find anywhere. If I had been there, I would have told her exactly where they were right away. And early yesterday morning, she went to the walk-in closet to change, and got a static shock from the metal wardrobe handle. That was the first time since we got married. When I was around, I always paid close attention to the humidity at home. Every fall and winter, I would wrap up anything prone to static with protective covers. Life with me around was actually really comfortable. But while she enjoyed it all, she never really cared about me. In the rainy night, Bai Ningbing leaned back in her car, thinking about everything I did. Finally, she made up her mind. The only reason she wanted me to come back was because I was perfectly suited to play the role of Mr. Fang, not because she actually had feelings for me. I ran all the way back to my rented place. Auntie Shu was waiting anxiously for me downstairs with an umbrella. I slowed my steps. Auntie Shu, why are you standing out here? Once we got inside, Auntie Shu grabbed a towel to dry my hair, saying, I was so worried about you, I had to come back and check. It's pouring out there, why didn't you just grab a cab? I sighed softly. It's hard to get a cab in the rain. After that, I went to take a hot shower. By the time I came out, Auntie Shu had heated up some soup to warm me up. While I was drinking it, Auntie Shu hesitated for a moment, then asked, how are things going with you and Bai Ningbing? I paused for a second. Then, I kept drinking my soup, and just muttered softly, she refuses to get a divorce. And I can't find a lawyer willing to take the case right now. But I did file for separation. 2 years at most. Even if she refuses, the divorce will go through anyway. Auntie Shu didn't say anything else. She just quietly applied some ointment to my hands. Looking at the cuts on my fingertips, Auntie Shu teared up. Back then, I was a top student at the music conservatory. So many famous masters wanted to take me under their wing. Even that musical genius, Wei, showed up at our door several times. And now, you're playing the violin in a place like that. I could read her mind. I tried to comfort her. Auntie Shu, once my dad gets better, and my sister gets out, I'm going to go back and finish my studies. Auntie Shu finally cracked a smile. I believe in you, kiddo. We'll have a famous musician in the family one day. I gave her a gentle smile. I hadn't smiled like that in a long time. Once I got back to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, carefully polishing my violin. I cherished it so much. Just then, my phone rang. It was the manager from the performance agency. He told me a high-end French restaurant was opening tomorrow, and they needed some classy entertainment. The manager chuckled. I immediately thought of you, Fang Yuan. 4 hours of playing, and you earn 5,000. It's like money falling from the sky. Fang Yuan, I know you're strapped for cash. We'll split it 50-50. That's pretty generous of me, right? 2,500 for 4 hours. I practically jumped to my feet. I'm usually not one for small talk, but I made sure to sweet-talk him a little to say thanks. The manager specifically reminded me, make sure you dress sharp for tomorrow. I gave a brief reply and hung up the phone. I couldn't help but pull my violin close, gently running my hands over it again and again. After letting the excitement settle, I went to pick out the right outfit. After searching for a bit, my eyes landed on that white cotton shirt and black dress pants. Touching the fabric, I felt a wave of nostalgia. This was the suit I wore back when I was Mr. Fang. It's been such a long time since I last put it on. The next evening, at a high-end French restaurant in the prime district of City B. The place was brightly lit, with waiters weaving through the tables, balancing their trays. I wore a crisp, tailored suit, my black hair slicked back neatly. A delicate tie clip rested against my crisp, white collar, making me look exceptionally sharp. Under the glow of the crystal chandelier, the way I played the violin looked incredibly elegant. Just outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a black Bentley was parked. Bai Ningbing was leaning against it, holding a glass of red wine. It was her first time watching me play. The way she looked at me carried a subtle, almost flirtatious spark, along with a deep possessiveness she wasn't even aware of. She didn't come inside. She just stood out there, waiting for me. She watched as women occasionally shot me admiring glances, some even coming up to hand me their business cards. But I just gave them a polite smile and declined. I was only there to play my violin. That made Bai Ningbing quite satisfied. To her, as long as I went home with her, she could just pretend my recent rebellious phase had never even happened. At 10:30 that night, the restaurant closed up. I packed up my violin and said my goodbyes to the manager. He was really happy with my performance, and paid me right on the spot. He even said he'd hire me again for future gigs. I thanked him once more. As I walked out of the restaurant, Bai Ningbing saw me and turned toward me. She was just about to call my name when someone else beat her to it. Xiao Yuan. I looked over toward the voice. Just a few steps away, Lu Rian had just finished parking her car. She waved at me. Let me give you a ride home. I felt it was getting pretty late, so it might not be entirely appropriate. I was just about to decline when she grabbed a food container from the passenger seat. My mom made some homemade dumplings. They're your favorite, celery filling. She insisted I bring them over for you. I felt a little embarrassed. Wow, your mom still remembers? Lu Rian gave a warm, gentle smile. She softly opened the passenger door. Get in, I'm heading that way anyway. At that point, I really couldn't say no. I got into the car and buckled my seatbelt. Sorry for the trouble, then. Lu Rian rested both hands on the steering wheel, tilting her head to look at me clutching the container. Her eyes were so warm. If you're hungry, just open it up and eat. They're still hot. But I didn't want things to feel too intimate, plus, I was afraid of making a mess in her car. I shook my head. I think I'll wait until I get home. Lu Rian didn't push it. She just gently pressed the gas pedal. And after a moment, she said cheerfully, eating comfortably at home sounds nice, too. The white BMW slowly drove off. Just about 10 meters away. Bai Ningbing stared in the direction the car drove off, her face so dark it could practically drip water. She grabbed her phone from the car and dialed a number. Soon, she got a reply. It was exactly as she had expected. The secret boss behind this restaurant was Lu Rian. I must have been so exhausted that I actually fell asleep in the car. When the car stopped, I was still sleeping. Lu Rian leaned over and looked at me, looking at my handsome but slightly tired face, looking at my tall, strong body hidden beneath my suit pants. She had never looked at a man so openly before. In the past, in her eyes, I was just a naive little kid. But after so many years, I had grown into a mature man, and it was Bai Ningbing who single-handedly molded me into what I am today. Lu Rian felt a bit conflicted. She couldn't help but gently touch my sharply contoured, yet somewhat haggard face. Her voice slightly hoarse. I was the one who met you first. I woke up, opening my eyes. I looked around. We're here already? I froze for a moment when I met Lu Rian's gaze. My grip instinctively tightened on the lunchbox I was holding. I'm a grown man. I'm not that dense. A bank card with 2 million on it, and handmade dumplings brought over specifically for me. To insist this was just for the sake of our past friendship would be a huge stretch. I thought for a moment before speaking softly. Sister Rian, I can handle the things going on at home. Please don't trouble yourself over me anymore. Lu Rian stared at me quietly. We were both adults. How could she not understand what I meant? I had figured out her feelings and I had rejected them. She probably figured I was holding back because of Ningbing, afraid of causing trouble. Lu Rian didn't make things difficult for me. She lightly tapped the lunchbox in my hands. Smiling faintly, she said, if you need anything, you can always find me. It would be a lie to say I wasn't moved at all. Anyone would be deeply grateful for help during their darkest hour. It's just that in the adult world, there are always too many concerns. Later, I stood in the night breeze, watching the white BMW slowly drive away. Once the car was gone, I slowly walked toward the old stairwell. The lights in the stairwell had been broken for days. With no property management, repairs were taking a while. It was pitch black everywhere. Just as I was about to turn on my phone's flashlight, a pair of soft, feminine arms grabbed me. After a few stumbles, the woman pinned me against the stairwell wall. Through a sliver of moonlight from the window, I saw Bai Ningbing's furious face. Looking exactly like she had just caught me cheating, Bai Ningbing glared at me, her dark eyes so cold they could freeze over. Hardness pressed against softness. The entire position was too scandalous to even look at. Bai Ningbing pressed her face close behind my ear, fiercely demanding if I wanted a divorce because of her. I shook my head, but just as I was about to speak, a soft, lingering gasp escaped. Bai Ningbing and I had been married for 3 years. She knew exactly how to turn me on instantly, how to make me feel good. In that dark, old stairwell, we both grew up with an elite education. I was the most proper, high society gentleman. And Bai Ningbing was so incredibly picky about her surroundings she was practically a neat freak. But in this moment, she couldn't care less. Bai Ningbing had almost lost her mind, and I was on the verge of a complete breakdown. No, Bai Ningbing, calm down, but she wouldn't listen to a single word. Do you even know who she is? Didn't you notice, she looks a bit like me? You just wanted a substitute. She was incredibly familiar with my body, and her technique was absolutely top-notch. A long while later, she leaned against my shoulder. Her soft, delicate skin looked so pale and gorgeous against the black shirt. Her body was still trembling in the afterglow. I was absolutely certain that Bai Ningbing had some kind of grudge against Lu Rian. Sighing helplessly, all I could do was carry her out of that rundown stairwell and put her in the car parked in the alley. The black Bentley looked completely out of place in such a shabby neighborhood. I turned on the AC and tossed a few tissues to her. Ever since we started our messy divorce, she hadn't had any physical release in a long time. After she straightened up her clothes a bit, she finally calmed down. I tried to figure out what was going on in Bai Ningbing's head. But honestly, it wasn't hard to guess. It was just that her soon-to-be ex-husband was getting too close to another woman and her ego couldn't handle it. It had absolutely nothing to do with love. As for this ridiculous, heat-of-the-moment intimacy, it only made me feel humiliated. I mocked her coldly. Bai Ningbing, don't tell me you're actually jealous? Bai Ningbing just reached out, gently caressing my cheek, and smirked. You really love flattering yourself, don't you? I'm simply reminding you that you are still Mr. Fang. Keep your distance from irrelevant women. My smile faded completely, but it's totally fine when you do it. Bai Ningbing's eyes darkened. When it came to Song Jinian, she actually didn't care all that much. Most of the time, Secretary Wu handled his affairs for her. Even when she went on business trips to City H, she only dropped by to see him occasionally. But she never bothered to explain any of this to me, because to her, there was no need. The only reason she lost control like this today was because of Lu Rian. Not because she actually cared about me. Bai Ningbing shifted into a more comfortable position, but I just wanted to leave. The moment I moved, she grabbed my hand. Wait, she turned her head to look at me. It was that exact same look I knew so well. The exact same cold, emotionless look she always had when negotiating a business deal. After a long pause, she pulled a bank card out of her wallet and handed it to me. This is my supplementary card. It has a monthly limit of 2 million. If that's not enough, I'll have Secretary Wu raise the limit. I stared at the platinum card, feeling a sudden pang in my chest. Really, this was the kind of gentle treatment I used to desperately hope for. After my family went bankrupt, I desperately needed the money. So, no matter how degrading it felt, I still took the 100,000 she gave me every month. But right now, I was painfully aware of exactly what taking this new card meant. It meant that I, Fang Yuan, had to go back to being her perfect Mr. Fang. It meant I would have to go back to serving her every single need, waiting on her hand and foot like I used to. It meant I'd have to mold myself into her ideal man, catering to her every single whim and preference. I would have to play the perfect arm candy at all her banquets. All I had to do was be a good, obedient boy. I didn't even need a soul, because that was exactly what Bai Ningbing was paying for. I pushed her card away, my hand gripping the car door tight, and spoke in a low voice. Bai Ningbing, your kindness is coming way too late. Even now, you still don't get it. You don't get why we can't go on anymore. The inside of the car was completely dark, until Bai Ningbing reached out and clicked the overhead light on. The sudden glare stung. I instinctively squeezed my eyes shut. She just sat there, idly twirling the bank card in her fingers. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. Are you talking about feelings? Fang Yuan, do you really think there's any room left for us to develop feelings? Don't forget how we ended up married in the first place. Her expression turned ice cold. So, stop begging for things that don't belong to you. I didn't even have the energy to explain anymore. I just looked at her, utterly exhausted. Does it belong to Song Jinian then? Bai Ningbing, since you care about him so much, since your heart aches for him, why didn't you just marry him? Honestly, a man's first time isn't even that big of a deal. Yes, we slept together back then, but if you didn't want to marry me, I wouldn't have forced you. And now, isn't it better if we just get a divorce? I'm so tired. I whispered the last few words. Let's just set each other free. With that, I pushed the door open and stepped out of the car. I walked away without a single backward glance. Bai Ningbing didn't even try to stop me. She just sat there in the driver's seat, totally expressionless. After a long while, she lazily reached up and clicked the overhead light back off. Just as the light faded, her eyes caught a glimpse of the crumpled, messy tissues on the seat. She thought back to what had just happened. She had actually noticed that I was acting completely different. If this had been the old me, being intimate in a place like this, no matter how good it felt, I would have hated it. But just now, I acted like I couldn't care less. I just walked away without hesitating. Bai Ningbing leaned back hard against the seat, raising a hand to pinch the bridge of her nose. She was ruthlessly ambitious in her career. Because of that, her private life was never as wild as other women's. She didn't love me, but I was handsome enough, and I was obedient. Bai Ningbing simply didn't have the energy to waste on other men. But now, a husband who wouldn't even come home was driving her crazy. The hallway of my building was completely dark. The lingering, musky scent of what we just did hung in the air. Swallowing my humiliation, I bent down to pick up the dropped box of handmade dumplings and my neglected violin. I dragged my exhausted body up to my apartment. Just as I was about to unlock the door, a voice called out, Fang Yuan. The motion sensor light flickered on, and I saw a totally familiar face. K. Jen. It took me a second to process it. How did you even find this place? I stopped by the hospital. Aunt Shu gave me the address. K. Jen said, giving me a quick nod. I came straight here after landing. Man, hurry up and get me something to eat. I've been starving for almost 12 hours. That airplane food was absolutely disgusting. I opened the door and let him inside. K. Jen dragged his suitcase in, but instantly frowned as he looked around. He turned back and gave my shoulder a heavy pat. Yuan, you've been through hell, haven't you? It's fine, K. Jen. Really, I'm quite used to living here. K. Jen didn't say a word. He knew I was lying. How could I ever get used to a place like this? I was born with a silver spoon. My old bathroom at home was bigger than this whole place. It took him a long time to process it. Once he finally calmed down, K-Jen forced a casual tone. I'm gonna grab a shower first. I'm crashing at your place tonight. It's been way too long, bro. We can finally have a good catch-up. While K-Jen was in the shower, I whipped up some food. The two of us sat down to eat. Trying to lighten the mood, K-Jen leaned in close to me and whispered, hey, earlier when I was waiting for you, there was some action going on in your hallway. I looked up. K-Jen's expression turned even more secretive. He gave a light cough. You know, that kind of action. It was too dark to see clearly, but I'm pretty damn sure I wasn't wrong. It suddenly hit me that the people making out in the hallway earlier were me and Bai Ningbing. I never expected K-Jen to hear us. Of course, I didn't want to admit it, but K-Jen has the nose of a bloodhound. He took one look at my face, then leaned in and took a sniff. There was a faint scent of women's perfume on my neck. K-Jen stared dead at me. Was that you and Bai Ningbing? I kept my head down, eating my noodles. I gave a quiet, yeah. She came by. K-Jen shoveled noodles into his mouth. He was absolutely furious. You two are already at each other's throats. And she still expects to play house? Plus, no matter what, you shouldn't be getting all handsy in the freaking hallway. She always acts so cold and proper in public, but she's that wild behind closed doors. I was too ashamed to talk about the things Bai Ningbing did at home. K-Jen was completely outraged for me. He dragged both Bai Ningbing and Song Jinian's names through the mud. After venting his anger, he put his hand on my shoulder and got serious. Auntie Shu told me everything that happened at home. Xiao Yuan, you can't keep playing the violin in those shady places. You've got to protect your reputation, man. As K-Jen spoke, he pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and took a slow drag. K-Jen is a model, so he's incredibly lean. When he smokes, he gets this rebellious, untamed look on his face. It's really captivating. He stared right at me. K-Jen said, go work at Su Qinghan's place. At the very least, it's a legit 6-star hotel. Performing there means you'll have a much classier audience. I've already talked to her. 2,000 a night, not a penny less, and you get 4 days off every month. I already knew about the history between K-Jen and Su Qinghan. I wanted to say no, but K-Jen was unusually stubborn about it. He slowly blew out a cloud of pale gray smoke, looking completely unbothered. She and I hooked up a long time ago. I felt too awkward to say anything back. K-Jen just patted my shoulder. But there is one thing that you really need to pay attention to. Do you still remember Professor Wei? I heard some domestic hotshot set up a project fund and invited him back to lead it. The catch is that Professor Wei has to mentor their little boy toy. I knew right away that Bai Ningbing was the one who invited him. K-Jen was completely mind blown. That little boy toy is Song Jinian. Xiao Yuan, why won't those two just leave us alone? If it wasn't for that accident back then, you'd have gone abroad with Professor Wei a long time ago. You wouldn't have to wait on Bai Ningbing hand and foot. K-Jen took a drag of his cigarette to calm his nerves. Finally, he muttered, that Bai Ningbing, she's a real piece of work. The price for just one night is too damn high. He thought I'd back down, but I just calmly replied, Professor Wei called me. He said he hopes I can study under him for the next 4 years here. K-Jen got pretty worked up and said, man, if you miss this chance, Xiao Yuan, I'll be the first one to kick your ass. First thing the next morning, K-Jen took me to a hotel owned by Su Qinghan. It was the most exclusive spot in City B, Imperial Court Hotel, practically a 6-star place. Usually, Su Qinghan wouldn't bother with something this trivial. But to show respect to K-Jen, she actually came down to meet me in person. She set me up with a job. Every night, from 8 to 11. Just 3 hours of work a day, for a monthly salary of 60,000. You could say it was an insanely sweet deal. But deep down, I knew Su Qinghan was only doing it as a favor to K-Jen. I glanced over at him. K-Jen shot me a playful wink, and Su Qinghan just rolled her eyes at him. She called the hotel manager over and told him to show me around the place. As soon as we left, Su Qinghan walked over to the door and locked it. Now, this office actually had an attached lounge, but she didn't even bother using it. They went straight at it right on the desk. 3 hours later, they were done. She completely ignored him. She just got right up, left him laying there, and went to take a shower. With the sound of the shower running in the background, K-Jen slumped exhausted on the floor. He didn't even care anymore, just reached out and lit a cigarette. Taking slow, heavy drags. He knew Su Qinghan couldn't wrap her head around it. Why a guy like him would be so incredibly loyal to me. But the truth is, I was the one who saved him. We go way back to middle school. Back then, his parents were heavily addicted to gambling. They sold absolutely everything in the house. They were practically ready to sell K-Jen himself. When his parents finally gambled away every last dime, he was left a total orphan. He had nowhere to live and he couldn't even pay his tuition. All the other kids shut him out. They looked at him like he was some kind of freak. Until one day, he just couldn't take it anymore, and he stepped out onto the edge of the roof. I was the one who dragged him back from that ledge. I sneaked him into my house, gave him fresh clothes, and made him take a hot shower. Then I went to the kitchen and grabbed a massive plate of food. That was a meal K-Jen would remember for the rest of his life. I hid him there for 3 days. After that, I begged Fang Ya to rent a place for him. I practically raised him for 6 years. Nobody really gets what I mean to him. As long as I need him, K-Jen would do absolutely anything for me. He'd throw everything away in a heartbeat. K-Jen finished his cigarette, threw on his clothes, and walked out without a second thought. By the time Su Qinghan got out of the shower, K-Jen was long gone. She slowly walked over to the desk, just staring at the small, wet stain left behind on the surface. I gave a slight smirk. Actually, K-Jen is pretty smart. Even Bai Ningbing would give her some face in this situation. I just wonder how Bai Ningbing will react. Probably nothing, right? Su Qinghan must have heard the rumors, at least a little. Bai Ningbing's and my marriage started off pretty rocky. We've been married for several years now, but things have always been lukewarm between us. We haven't even tried for kids. People in our circle are even taking bets on when Bai Ningbing is finally going to divorce me. Aren't there rumors going around that she's keeping a toy boy? Meanwhile, at the Bai group, Secretary Wu knocked on the door. After getting the go-ahead, he pushed the door open and walked in. Bai Ningbing was on a call. The call was from Madame Bai. The conversation was exactly what Secretary Wu was planning to report to her. Bai Ningbing, are you really just going to let Fang Yuan parade around in public like this? What kind of person do you think Su Qinghan is? And that guy named K-Jen. His reputation is absolute trash. Fang Yuan absolutely cannot be associating with him. Bai Ningbing, you need to keep your husband on a much shorter leash. Bai Ningbing's tone carried a hint of careless indifference. Fang Yuan is currently throwing a tantrum about getting a divorce. How am I supposed to control him? Madame Bai cared about the Bai family's reputation more than anything. She ranted and raved for ages, but her daughter was completely unfazed. Furious, she hung up the phone. Bai Ningbing set her phone down and looked up at Secretary Wu. Fang Yuan went over to Su Qinghan's place, just as Secretary Wu was about to speak. He noticed a velvet box resting right by Bai Ningbing's hand. He recognized that box. Inside was my wedding ring. For it to be kept right by her hand, she must have been opening it to look at it in her downtime. And on Bai Ningbing's own ring finger, she was still wearing her silver wedding ring. Bai Ningbing doesn't love me, yet she wears her ring all the time, making sure to remind other men of her married status. Secretary Wu's fingers twitched slightly. After a brief moment, he gave a faint smile. It was K-Jen who introduced them. You know, that model with the rather poor reputation. I honestly don't know how Mr. Fang managed to strike up a friendship with him. Bai Ningbing didn't care about K-Jen, and she certainly didn't care about Su Qinghan. Instead, her thoughts drifted to Lu Rian. The way Lu Rian looked at me, it was unmistakably the way a woman looks at a man she's in love with. That whole childhood neighbor's excuse? That was nothing but a front. Bai Ningbing leaned back in her chair. She casually flipped through some documents. Her tone completely flat. Tonight's social dinner with Ji Wanyan. Book it at the Royal Court Hotel. Secretary Wu was caught off guard yet again, because Bai Ningbing's business dinners were strictly held at standard business hotels, which were always incredibly dull. This sudden exception was entirely because of Fang Yuan. He stayed quiet for a long moment. Bai Ningbing raised her eyes to look at him. Is there a problem? Secretary Wu hastily bowed his head. President Bai, I'll make the arrangements right away. 8 p.m. The Royal Court Hotel, 56th floor. Ji Wanyan's crowd had already arrived, Su Qinghan included. They were sitting in a circle playing cards. Most of the women had handsome young guys sitting right next to them. Minor celebrities and little models. This particular clique was pretty much the most powerful group of second-generation heirs in City B. And even among them, Bai Ningbing was considered the absolute top tier. So, when she walked over, several of them actually went out of their way to stand up, waiting for Bai Ningbing to take her seat. Su Qinghan poured her a drink herself, teasing her a bit. You're a rare sight around here. But, there's someone even rarer. Bai Ningbing, you would never guess. Bai Ningbing already guessed who it was. It had to be Lu Rian. Just as she was feeling annoyed, I walked out. I rested my violin on my shoulder just like always, getting ready to play. Then, my eyes froze. I saw her, Bai Ningbing. The lights in the performance hall were dim and moody. She leaned back in her chair, oozing that untouchable, expensive aura of hers, staring at me with those cold eyes, looking exactly like she did back home. Whenever she tormented me, watching me drown in desire all by myself. Even though I had already asked her for a divorce, the moment our eyes met, I still couldn't help but shiver. As I drew my bow, my hands trembled slightly, but the music was still beautiful. Bai Ningbing looked a little surprised. She didn't know the first thing about music. But I played that serenade flawlessly. And beneath the beautiful melody, it felt vaguely familiar to her. Like she'd heard it somewhere before. But Bai Ningbing was certain. Before or after we got married, she had never once heard me play the violin. So, where could she have heard it? As she sat there thinking, the song came to an end. Applause echoed through the room. Down in the crowd, Ji Wanyan hadn't expected to run into me either. We had a bit of bad blood. Back in the day, her younger brother, Ji Xian, was madly in love with Bai Ningbing. But I beat him to the punch. Losing out on a massive marriage alliance with the Bai family obviously pissed Ji Wanyan off. She was determined to make things hard for me. She leaned over with a sly smile, clearly testing the waters. "Oh, Bai Ningbing, look who it is. Fang Yuan is here too." Bai Ningbing just swirled the wine in her glass. She didn't say a single word. That was all the proof Ji Wanyan needed that Bai Ningbing didn't care about me at all. So, she called out to me on stage. "Fang Yuan." I glanced over. I knew Ji Wanyan was up to no good, but Su Qinghan was sitting right there with them. I had to show Su Qinghan some respect. So, I walked over. Ji Wanyan immediately poured me 3 shots of hard liquor. She sounded sickeningly polite. "Fang Yuan, who would have thought we'd bump into you here? Back when you and Bai Ningbing got married, Yao Feng was young and stupid. He threw a bit of a tantrum. Let me make it up to you today on his behalf." Ji Wanyan went to business dinners all the time. Her alcohol tolerance was insane. She downed her 3 shots like it was just water. Then, she stared dead at me. "Fang Yuan, a big man like you wouldn't look down on me and refuse my toast, right?" Su Qinghan just sat there, resting her chin on a slender finger. Technically, I worked for her here, so she should have stepped in. But since Bai Ningbing hadn't made a peep, why should she? Besides, she definitely wanted to see how Bai Ningbing would react. She glanced over at Bai Ningbing. My wife was still leaning back into the sofa, playing with her wine glass. Her dark eyes were slightly downcast, showing absolutely zero emotion. It looked like she couldn't care less. Su Qinghan thought to herself that Bai Ningbing and I were indeed getting a divorce. Just as she was about to say a few words to diffuse the tension, I picked up a glass of strong liquor. I looked quietly at Ji Wanyan and asked in a flat tone, "If I finish these 3 glasses, no matter what happens, you won't make things difficult for me anymore?" Ji Wanyan narrowed her eyes slightly. She had fully intended to make my life miserable after my divorce from Bai Ningbing. She really didn't expect me to be this much smarter than she thought. But 3 glasses of liquor would be more than enough to make me suffer. Ji Wanyan gave a soft chuckle. "You have my word. Drink these 3 glasses, and we wipe the slate completely clean. Even when you divorce Bai Ningbing, I won't give you a hard time." I knew her well enough to know she wouldn't go back on her word. I looked down at the liquor in my hand. I'm a total lightweight. 1 glass is usually enough to knock me out. But I had absolutely no choice. The Fang family was already hanging by a thread. I couldn't afford to make another enemy. I tilted my head back and downed the entire glass. The moment I finished, the alcohol hit me instantly, and my face flushed burning red. A strange thrill ran through Ji Wanyan's heart, though even she couldn't pinpoint what that feeling was. After I finished the 2nd glass, Su Qinghan finally spoke up. "Ji Wanyan, okay, that's enough." But Ji Wanyan wouldn't let it go. She clearly still wanted to vent her frustrations. I was actually already at my absolute limit, but I reached for the 3rd glass anyway. My hand was trembling slightly as I held it. Just as I was about to drink, Bai Ningbing's calm voice rang out, taking everyone in the room by complete surprise. Bai Ningbing stood up from the sofa. She grabbed my wrist with one hand, and took the glass right out of my hand with the other. She looked at Ji Wanyan, her tone carrying a sharp hint of displeasure. "This last glass, I will drink for my husband." She tilted her head back, downed the liquor, and helped me up to leave. The entire room fell into dead silence. Nobody was stupid. They could all clearly tell that Ji Wanyan had just seriously offended Bai Ningbing. After a long pause, Su Qinghan patted Ji Wanyan's shoulder. "We totally misjudged her, huh? Right? Honestly, not just you. Even I didn't expect Bai Ningbing to step in like that. But if you think about it, if she really didn't care about him at all, she would have divorced him. Back when the Fang family collapsed. Yet she's stuck by him for over a year now." Ji Wanyan leaned back in her chair and covered her eyes with her hand. She suddenly felt a sharp, uneasy pang in her chest. Meanwhile, the alcohol had kicked in, and I was already half drunk. Bai Ningbing led me out to the parking lot, opened the passenger door and told me to get in. I refused. I was drunk, but not completely blacked out. I leaned back against the car door, tilted my head up slightly and mumbled, "Bai Ningbing, I'm not going home with you. We're getting a divorce." Bai Ningbing looked down at me, her deep, dark eyes locked onto mine without breaking contact for a single second. Seeing my wild, uninhibited state after getting drunk, she had never seen me like this before. Dressed in a black shirt and dress pants, an outfit that couldn't be more proper. Yet right now, it practically oozed masculine charm. Bai Ningbing leaned in close to my ear. Gritting her teeth, she hissed, "Look at yourself. Where is that perfect gentleman now?" I tilted my head up to look at her. My eyes seemed to clear up for a second, but quickly clouded over again. Bai Ningbing gave up trying to reason with me. She just shoved me straight into the car, a little roughly. I threw a fit, trying to get out, but my body just slumped back against the seat. I kept mumbling things she hated to hear. Bai Ningbing was getting really annoyed. She slammed the central locking button. She was just about to buckle my seatbelt, when out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of the car opposite us, and the person sitting inside it. It was Lu Rian. Both cars had their headlights blazing. The two women sat in their cars, silently sizing each other up. Lu Rian's gaze was as dark as the ink-black night, and so was Bai Ningbing's. After a long moment, Bai Ningbing leaned over and buckled me in. I was so drunk I was half asleep, and I shifted around uncomfortably. Still slurring my words, I muttered, "I'm not going back with you." Bai Ningbing gently stroked my cheek, her voice dropping to a husky whisper. "If you don't go back with me, who are you going back with?" She ignored whatever nonsense I was spewing and sat back up straight. She stared blankly at Lu Rian across the way. Then, right under the other woman's watchful eyes, she drove me away. The two luxury cars brushed past each other in the night. Lu Rian's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly, while Bai Ningbing just let out a cold, mocking smirk. The city lights slowly faded away. Deep into the night, Bai Ningbing's car smoothly pulled into the villa. Hearing us arrive, the maid rushed over to open her door, asking meekly, "Miss, would you like me to prepare a midnight snack?" She paused for a second in surprise. "Oh, sir is back too." Bai Ningbing unbuckled her seatbelt and said coolly, "Brew some hangover tea and bring it upstairs in a bit. Sir is drunk." The maid quickly nodded and hurried off to get it done. Bai Ningbing turned to look at her husband in the passenger seat. I had completely passed out in the car. Bai Ningbing was no saint. It had been a long time for her, too. She leaned over and reached out for me, playfully teasing my body. Her beautiful eyes locked onto my face, watching my every expression without blinking. I had my own desires too, not to mention, I was completely drunk. Stirred by her touch, I unconsciously murmured her name, over and over again, Bai Ningbing. With a soft click, Bai Ningbing unbuckled my seatbelt. She got out and propped me up, leading me straight into the grand house. The alcohol and all the swaying made my head pound. Bai Ningbing, slow down. I was just talking about walking, but it somehow came out sounding incredibly suggestive. Bai Ningbing couldn't resist leaning in to kiss me. Inside the master bedroom, the crystal chandelier shined brightly, casting light on the chaotic mess scattered across the floor. The maid had just finished making the hangover soup and was about to bring it over. But after a quick peek through the crack in the door, she hurriedly backed away. Bai Ningbing was in such a rush, she didn't even take her clothes off. She just shoved the wedding ring right back onto my finger. My mind was completely hazy. As I softly mumbled, "Bai Ningbing, do you even know, I actually don't love you anymore. I don't love you anymore." I repeated it over and over. Bai Ningbing's expression instantly darkened. She glared at me with sheer ferocity, staring for a long time before coldly spitting out a few words. "You think I care?" And it was true, she really didn't need to care. Because she didn't love me. Because our marriage was a mistake from the very beginning. Because logic told Bai Ningbing that she had absolutely no reason to care about such childish feelings. All she needed was an obedient, submissive husband. Right now, she refused to admit how deeply unsettled she felt. Even less did she want to acknowledge the sudden surge of rage that gripped her when I said I didn't love her anymore. It made her deeply uncomfortable, as if something that belonged solely to her had suddenly been snatched away. She was even less willing to guess exactly when I stopped having feelings for her. After a long silence, she walked out of the bedroom and slowly headed downstairs. Her stunningly cold face was grim, her expression unreadable. The maid, who was still awake, looked quite surprised to see her expression. Weren't the young miss and her husband getting along just fine a moment ago? Why did she look so upset? "Give me the hangover tea," Bai Ningbing ordered, her voice flat and icy. The maid quickly handed her the bowl of soup and nervously backed away. Bai Ningbing carried the hangover tea back upstairs. Inside the master bedroom, a faint, sweet scent lingered in the air, like the fragrance of blooming lotus flowers in June. Clothes were scattered all over the messy floor, but Bai Ningbing completely ignored them. She sat on the edge of the bed, her tone harsh and impatient. "Get up, drink this hangover tea before you go to sleep." I completely ignored her, my voice trembling as I spoke. "Bai Ningbing, we shouldn't be doing things like this." Bai Ningbing stared dead at me. After a long, tense silence, she said in a chilling voice, "You still have the nerve to say that? I really want to just suffocate you to death. At least then, you wouldn't be able to say such awful things." Bai Ningbing was always so incredibly proud. She rarely ever coaxed anyone. Besides, all this time, she had truly been burning up with intense frustration. Too annoyed to even deal with me right now, she just threw herself onto the bed, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. But with me sleeping right next to her, how could she possibly fall asleep? She tossed and turned for a long time. Finally, Bai Ningbing reached out and aggressively yanked me, pulling me tight against her chest. Gritting her teeth right next to my ear, she hissed, "If you don't love me, don't you even dare think about loving anyone else." I was shivering a little, but the moment I felt her radiating heat, I unconsciously hugged her a little tighter. Bai Ningbing woke up first. She was practically roasted awake. She was holding onto something absolutely burning hot, which had completely soaked her bathrobe in sweat. When she opened her eyes, she saw my unnaturally flushed face. Reaching out to touch it, my face was burning up. Bai Ningbing immediately got up. She hurried downstairs and told the maid to call Dr. Wang over right away. The maid quickly asked, "Are you feeling unwell, miss?" Bai Ningbing was already heading back upstairs. Hearing this, she paused. "Just tell him sir is running a fever. Have him come over as fast as possible." Half an hour later, Dr. Wang rushed over. In the bedroom, the maid had already tidied everything up perfectly. There wasn't a single trace of intimacy left behind. The doctor gave me a thorough checkup. He said my fever was pretty high. Let's give him a shot to bring the fever down. Also, Mr. Fang's body is severely depleted. He really needs to keep up his nutrition. The doctor didn't pry any further, but Bai Ningbing knew exactly what he meant. I was completely overworked and often skipped meals. I used to be so pampered. When had I ever suffered like this before? The doctor gave me a shot. Before leaving, he instructed, "It's best if he stays in bed and rests for a day." Bai Ningbing nodded. She had the maid walk the doctor downstairs to see him out. A moment later, footsteps echoed in the stairwell again. Thinking it was the maid coming back, Bai Ningbing ordered, "Cook a bowl of plain porridge. Let it cool a bit and bring it upstairs." But the person walking through the door was Secretary Wu. He was carrying several women's suits. He had dropped them off at the dry cleaners for her last week, and specifically brought them over first thing in the morning. When he saw me lying in bed, he was clearly shocked. Why was I back? And it was glaringly obvious that Bai Ningbing and I had shared a bed last night. No matter how spotless the bedroom was, there was still a faint little hickey lingering on the back of my neck. Seeing it was him, Bai Ningbing glanced at the clothes in his hands. She frowned slightly. "Leave those on the couch. And head downstairs. You don't need to handle these personal errands anymore." Secretary Wu's gaze dropped, looking incredibly embarrassed, like he had just been exposed. He loved taking care of these personal matters for her. It made him feel almost like he was her husband. But his little fantasy seemed to have been completely seen through by Bai Ningbing. As he walked out, his heart was practically burning with resentment. He was probably wondering why he was so incredibly hostile toward me, yet felt totally indifferent, even tolerant, of Song Jinian. Deep down, he probably knew the truth. If Bai Ningbing was going to fall for someone, it would only be me. Because women always fall for the absolute best. And Bai Ningbing was no exception. After Secretary Wu left, Bai Ningbing looked back at me on the bed. I was still fast asleep. She stood by the bedside and gently patted my arm. When I didn't react, she patted a little harder. She didn't stop until I groggily rolled over and turned my back to her. Only then did she seem slightly satisfied. But quickly, her eyes darkened again. Bai Ningbing walked out to the living room. She stared at the suits. They were perfectly clean, but they still carried that chemical dry cleaning smell she hated. But more than that, she absolutely loathed outsiders touching her personal belongings. Downstairs, Secretary Wu sat on the sofa in the lobby. The maid poured him a cup of tea. He sat drinking tea, looking so elegant and poised, acting exactly like the master of the house. That was right when Bai Ningbing came downstairs. Secretary Wu watched her, unable to hide the deep admiration in his eyes. Back in college, he had actually chased after her. But his little crush was absolutely nothing compared to all the wealthy heirs fawning over her. Bai Ningbing sat down right across from him. Secretary Wu gave a slight smile. Putting on his most professional attitude, he said, "Since Mr. Fang is back, then he'll be taking over these matters. From now on, for Mr. Fang's living expenses and such. Does he still need to report and register them with me?" Hearing this, Bai Ningbing felt completely disgusted. Because when I asked her for a divorce, those were the exact words I used. Seeing her stay perfectly silent, Secretary Wu took it upon himself to continue. "Don't worry, Boss Bai. I'll get it all arranged." Bai Ningbing just looked at him quietly. She was a sharp, perceptive woman. Whenever a man admired her or had any hidden motives, she could definitely sense it. She just didn't care in the past, because it never messed with her daily life. But clearly, Secretary Wu had crossed a line. Bai Ningbing thought about it for half a minute. Then she said coldly, "Next month, you're transferring to the Canadian branch. Your title and pay will stay exactly the same." Secretary Wu completely froze. He forced a stiff, awkward smile. Boss bye. I have a girlfriend. Bai Ningbing didn't say a single word. Secretary Wu gritted his teeth. Next month, you'll get my wedding invitation. This time, Bai Ningbing lazily stood up. Well then, I'll wait for your good news. Secretary Wu was trembling all over. He knew damn well in his heart. Bai Ningbing did this because she saw right through his feelings. She absolutely refused to let anyone by her side harbor those kinds of thoughts. He couldn't help but ask. Boss Bai, is it because of me? Bai Ningbing's footsteps paused for a second. After a moment, she replied with a sharp, harsh tone. No, it's because you crossed the line. What she needed was a capable, efficient secretary, not some petty guy trying to play smart. And this was something Secretary Wu never seemed to grasp. I had been passed out for most of the day. When I finally woke up, dusk had already fallen. The bedroom lights were off. There was only a faint glimmer coming through the window. I sat up. My body still felt pretty weak. I looked down at the black pajamas I was wearing. I figured Bai Ningbing must have changed me into them. The very next second, all those wild, drunken memories came flooding back to me. Over by the bedroom door, Bai Ningbing stood quietly, just watching me, seeing me staring blankly into space. She probably guessed exactly what I was thinking. She spoke in a flat, cool tone. Nothing happened. You were blackout drunk. What did you think you could even do? As we sat there in heavy silence, a maid brought some warm porridge upstairs. She was a really quick-witted girl. Sensing the awkward tension in the air, she put on a bright smile and said, "When you got sick, sir, the missus was just so worried. Why, just this morning, she specifically told us to make something warm and nourishing for you. Lotus root porridge is the absolute best. Sir, please wash up and drink this while it's hot. You'll feel a bit better." In front of the servant, I couldn't bring myself to lose face. Bai Ningbing knew exactly what I was thinking, so she took the tray from the servant. "You can go now." The servant left. Bai Ningbing closed the door, turned, placed the tray on the small round table in the bedroom, and then looked up at me. "Still not getting up? Are you waiting for me to feed you?" Her tone was sharp. She was clearly still holding a grudge over my drunken confession from last night. Even though I was fighting with her and wanted a divorce, I wasn't going to punish my own body. Besides, I was actually really hungry. The lotus root porridge smelled amazing. After finishing a bowl, I felt so much better. Over by the floor-to-ceiling windows, Bai Ningbing stood silently. The moonlight spilled in through the glass, casting a glow on her profile, making her face look even more breathtakingly soft. Once I finished the porridge, Bai Ningbing turned to look at me. "Grandma called. She wants us to go back and visit. What do you think?" Bai Ningbing's grandmother had always been so good to me, and I really couldn't bear to break the old lady's heart. But my divorce from Bai Ningbing, Grandma was bound to find out sooner or later. I chose my words carefully and said, "Bai Ningbing, why don't you explain things to Grandma?" "Explain what?" Bai Ningbing's eyes burned with intensity. "Explain to her that you want to divorce me? So we can't go see her? You're in such a rush. Afraid of holding up your little rendezvous?" I couldn't even be bothered to explain myself. I got up, intending to change my clothes and leave, but Bai Ningbing wouldn't let me. She spread her arms to block my way, a hint of mockery playing on her face. "Paid service, Mr. Fang. How about 20,000 a time?" Without even asking for my consent, Bai Ningbing snatched up my phone, forced my hand to the screen, unlocked it, took her own number off my block list, and transferred 20,000 to my account. After she was done, she even sneered. "Playing the violin for Su Qinghan all night only gets you 2,000, right?" I gave a faint, mocking smile. "And that one time you set off fireworks for Song Jinian cost at least 1 million, didn't it?" "What do you mean by that?" Bai Ningbing fixed her cold gaze on me, and asked again in a low, dangerous voice. "Fang Yuan, what does that mean?" I was getting annoyed. "It means nothing." After a long, tense moment, she backed me into a corner. Her face was practically touching mine, and she whispered right behind my ear, "Then you tell me. What exactly does mean something?" Even though Bai Ningbing was the one asking, she clearly had no intention of letting me answer, because the very next second she grabbed my hand and pressed it against her body. I froze for a second, and her soft red lips immediately crashed into mine. There was no way I was going to just give in. I pushed my hands against her chest to hold her back. "Bai Ningbing, we can't keep doing this." But how could Bai Ningbing hold back now? She was acting incredibly bold and entitled. "Why can't I, Mr. Fang? We're still legally married." After a long moment, as we were grappling with each other, a knock sounded at the door. Probably hearing the commotion inside, the maid sounded a bit hesitant. She kept her voice low. "Miss?" His grandmother called from the in-laws, asking if Sir is here. How should I reply? Inside the bedroom, the commotion stopped. I shoved Bai Ningbing away, and called out to the door, "Just tell her I'll be right back." The maid acknowledged. A moment later, footsteps echoed outside, gradually fading away. I got up and straightened my clothes. After a moment, feeling flushed and angry, I asked, "Where are the clothes I came in?" Things got pretty wild last night, so I tore them off. Aren't there more in the closet? What, don't want to be Mr. Bai anymore? You don't even want to touch the clothes? I didn't want to hear another word from her. I went to the walk-in closet, picked out the most ordinary outfit to change into, grabbed my phone, and got ready to leave. But Bai Ningbing got up to follow me. I'll drop you off. I didn't refuse. I'll just treat it as the last time. As for what Bai Ningbing did last night, I'll just pretend none of it ever happened. Things like this won't ever happen again. Out in the courtyard, Bai Ningbing was fuming, slamming the car door shut with a loud bang. If this were the past, I definitely would have cared. But right now, I just leaned back against the seat, figuring she was probably sexually frustrated. Or maybe she got pissed off by Song Jinian. Thinking of that guy, my chest felt heavy. Suddenly, someone grabbed my hand. Bai Ningbing's faint voice sounded by my ear. What are you thinking about? I snapped back to reality, realizing the car was stopped at an intersection. It was a red light ahead. I pulled my hand away from Bai Ningbing's grasp, and turned my head to look out the window, my attitude a bit cold. Nothing really. Bai Ningbing looked at my indifferent side profile, feeling a bit uncomfortable inside. She suddenly remembered the past. The days when we were just married. Back then, I was only in my early 20s. I loved her so much back then. Every night when she came home from work, I would always sprint downstairs to carry her bag, eagerly telling her about the dishes I had cooked for dinner, and run her bathwater before bed. But slowly, I stopped smiling as much and I stopped trying to please her. It seemed I had finally accepted the fact that she didn't love me, and I slowly realized that no matter how much I did, it was all just in vain to her. All I ever got in return was coldness and indifference. I was still considerate, but it was more like the consideration expected of a Mr. Bai for his wife. There was no love, just going through the motions. Just like the truth I blurted out when I was drunk, honestly, I stopped liking her a long time ago. Thinking of all this, Bai Ningbing felt a surge of irritation. She shifted her gaze back to the front of the car, with no intention of speaking to me anymore. The light turned green, and the black Bentley slowly pulled forward. Under the neon lights, the expensive car gleamed brightly. I pressed my palm against the car window, staring at the French restaurant by the side of the road. I froze. It was actually closed down. It had just opened a few days ago, and I even played the violin here. Later, I even ran into Lu Rian and Bai Ningbing. I slowly turned my head, looking at Bai Ningbing's side profile. I finally understood why she had insisted on driving me home. I spoke softly. Bai Ningbing, is this what you wanted me to see? Bai Ningbing focused on driving, completely ignoring me. It wasn't until we reached my apartment building, and the car stopped, that she turned sideways, looked at me, and said, "Do you know whose restaurant that is?" I had guessed it, but I didn't say a word. Bai Ningbing let out a soft scoff. "I don't know what Lu Rian's motives are for helping you like that, but Mr. Fang, don't forget, you are still a married man right now." I gave a faint smile. Bai Ningbing's thoughts weren't hard to guess. She didn't hide them either. It was nothing more than a woman's petty jealousy. Even if she doesn't love her husband, she still won't let other women touch him. Not even in their fantasies. I didn't want to yield to Bai Ningbing, but I also didn't want to drag Lu Rian into this. After weighing my words, I spoke in a deep voice. "Our marriage has absolutely nothing to do with her. Bai Ningbing, don't go after her." Bai Ningbing stared right into my eyes. After a long pause, she raised her hand and gently touched my face. "I believe you, Mr. Fang." Her tone carried a hint of mockery. I felt humiliated, turning my face away. "I'm not what you think." Bai Ningbing stared at me intently for a few seconds, then pulled her hand back. She sat up straight, her tone more serious than I had ever heard before. She asked me, "Fang Yuan, if you had to do it all over again, would you marry Lu Rian, or me?" I froze slightly. I never expected Bai Ningbing to ask such a question, but clearly, she had no intention of hearing my answer. She quietly unlocked the car door for me. "Get out." The moment I stepped out of the car, Bai Ningbing slammed the gas. The black Bentley quickly sped off into the night, vanishing from my sight. I stood there in the dark, the night as cold as water. I pulled my clothes tighter around me, thinking about what Bai Ningbing had just asked. She asked me how I would choose if I could do it all over again. I gave a faint smile. In our youth, we always choose the one we love, even if it means acting like a moth drawn to a flame, suffering through all the pain. Now, if you let me choose one more time, I think maybe I would choose someone who loves me. But there aren't that many what-ifs in life. I went upstairs, but Aunt Shu wasn't home. I called to ask, and Shu Ru said she had never called Bai Ningbing's villa. I put down my phone, guessing that the maid at the villa must have lied to help me get away. I didn't dwell on it. It was a rare night off from work. I went back to my bedroom and went to sleep early. I had a dream last night. I dreamt about the early days of my marriage to Bai Ningbing again. Bai Ningbing was still incredibly cold to me. Whenever she spoke to me, she always sounded so impatient. My phone ringing woke me up. I checked it. Surprisingly, it was a message from Bai Ningbing. Just a few simple words. Don't forget we're visiting Grandma tomorrow. I'll wait for you at the Royal Court after work. How could I forget? Thinking about that fireworks show she put on for Song Jinian, I just accepted the transfer and donated all of it to the stray animal shelter. Meanwhile, Bai Ningbing was scrolling through her phone. Seeing that I had accepted the 20,000 transfer, she figured that I'd at least reply with something. I used to love texting her all the time. Never anything important, I just loved sending them. But Bai Ningbing never once replied to my pointless rambling. Looking back, it seems like ever since my family went bankrupt, I stopped sending her those kinds of messages. And I stopped asking if she'd ever fall in love with me. Honestly, I changed a long time ago. She just never noticed because she never cared about me in the first place. For the very first time, Bai Ningbing sat alone in her car, thinking about me. Thinking about our marriage. Early the next morning, I went to the hospital and picked up some fruit. Auntie Shu was really happy, but she still pretended to scold me for wasting money. We haven't even finished what you bought a couple of days ago, why did you buy more? Fang Deshan was in pretty good spirits, leaning halfway back against the headboard. You should have some too. The kid just cares about you. That made Shu Ru's eyes well up with tears. After chatting for a bit, she found an excuse to pull me outside for a talk. Yesterday, the hospital suddenly transferred Lu Rian out of town for training. They said it'll be a while before she's back. Yuan, be honest with me. Was this Bai Ningbing's doing? Is something going on between you and Dr. Lu? I froze, thinking back to the French restaurant Bai Ningbing deliberately showed me last night. I realized this was just another warning from her. A chill ran down my spine. Now, I could finally feel Bai Ningbing's possessiveness. But it wasn't about possessing me as Fang Yuan. It was about possessing the title of her husband. Not wanting Shu Ru to worry, I said softly, Auntie Shu, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Since I practically grew up around Shu Ru, she obviously knew my character, so she didn't press the issue. She headed back into the ward, leaving me standing in the hallway. I looked down at my phone. I wanted to apologize to Lu Rian, but after hesitating for a long time, I never made the call. Maybe keeping your distance is the best way for adults to protect each other. I spent the whole morning at the hospital. After lunch, I decided to go buy some new guitar strings. Just as I walked up to the bus stop, a black Land Rover suddenly pulled up right next to me. The window rolled down, revealing a beautiful face. It was Ji-Yu Wanyan. Seeing me again, she felt a complicated mix of emotions. In the past, she really used to look down on me. She figured I'd cling to Bai Ningbing for dear life. But she never expected that I'd actually have the guts to demand a divorce. Plus, my whole look had changed. I dropped that overly groomed Mr. Fang aesthetic. Just a white shirt, black trousers and a black knit vest layered over it. Simple and casual. Ji-Yu Wanyan just stood there, staring at me. I don't know why, but as if something came over her, she suddenly muttered, "Where are you going? I'll give you a ride." That totally caught me off guard. Mostly because of Ji-Yu Xian. Ji-Yu Wanyan had never exactly been warm to me. Hell, she was giving me a hard time just the night before last. So her offering me a ride out of nowhere? My gut instantly told me she was up to no good. I took a step back, keeping my tone a bit cold. Ji-Yu Wanyan, you said you were done messing with me. She kept her eyes on me. After a long pause, she quietly let out a few words. I did say that, and with that, she sped off. Her black Land Rover leaving nothing but a trail of exhaust in its wake. I figured that was the end of it with her. But surprise, surprise, I ran into her again that very night on the 56th floor of the Imperial Club. She was sitting there playing cards with Su Qinghan's crew, but this time, she didn't have some D-list celebrity or amateur model hanging off her arm. When I walked up to the stage, Ji-Yu Wanyan glanced up. It was a subtle movement, but Su Qinghan caught it right away. Su Qinghan looked over at me on stage, then casually threw down a winning pair of jokers. Ji-Yu Wanyan, you don't usually grace my place with your presence. What's the special occasion today? What kind of wind blew you all the way out here? Ji-Yu Wanyan replied without missing a beat, am I not welcome? Su Qinghan let out a laugh. Don't be like that. I'd love nothing more than for Boss Ji-Yu to come throw her cash at me every single day. Hearing that, Ji-Yu Wanyan just gave a faint smirk. Right in the middle of their banter, Bai Ningbing walked in. She must have come straight from home. She was wearing her usual flowing black dress, flaunting that perfect hourglass figure and absolutely flawless face. The second she walked in, she effortlessly stole every eye in the room. Su Qinghan glanced over at Ji-Yu Wanyan. Ji-Yu Wanyan shifted in her seat, her expression growing noticeably colder. Su Qinghan offered a smooth, knowing smile. Well, if it isn't Bai Ningbing, here to pick up Fang Yuan from his shift? Bai Ningbing completely ignored the teasing. She didn't let it bother her. She sat down right across from Su Qinghan, took a delicate sip from a glass of red wine, and said softly, I'm taking Fang Yuan back to the family estate for the night. My grandmother's been missing him. Su Qinghan let out another chuckle. Well, isn't that interesting? She leaned in and lowered her voice. Are you sure you can even get him to go with you now? Because K-Jen told me you two are getting a divorce. Didn't he already drop the divorce papers off at your office? But when it came to their private marital drama, Bai Ningbing had zero interest in sharing the details. It was then she finally noticed that Ji Wanyan was actually sitting there, too. Ji Wanyan's face was completely unreadable, but sometimes a woman's intuition is terrifyingly sharp. Especially when her own husband is involved. That radar is absolutely foolproof. Ji Wanyan was here because of me. Bai Ningbing's dark eyes deepened. She stared up at me on the stage in absolute silence for a long moment. Before finally tearing her gaze away. Let's just play cards. Same old rules. 10 a hand. Su Qinghan chimed in, yeah, 10 a hand. Ji Wanyan didn't say a word and just started shuffling the cards. I got off work early at 10. I just got off stage. Bai Ningbing tossed her cards onto the coffee table and stood up. I'm heading out. Su Qinghan watched the direction Bai Ningbing left in. She gave a playful smirk, turned around, and said, sounding completely casual, Ji Wanyan, stop staring. She's been married for 3 years already.